Hello, everybody. Welcome back to BLS021. Today with the one and only Zack DEROSE. Show and tell. Zack, how are you doing? You're on mute.
There we go. It feels so weird to be on the other side. I usually say that line every time. We'll see you on the other side thing.
Well, for those of you that don't know Zack, he's the inspiration, and at least one of the inspirations, and for sure the name giver of BLS. Zack did the show ZLS, which is at this moment called ZDS, I think.
Yeah, we went from Zack live stream to I wanted to stop doing them live just because I wanted to focus more on conversations. But it's fun to still do stuff live every now and then and be able to show some code. So very cool. Excited to be on BLS. Thank you, B-Man, for inviting me. This is really cool.
Awesome. Yeah, it's good to have you. You were one of the people on the list that should be there at some point. So it's great we managed to get it in 2020 even.
Yeah, sneaking it in there, huh?
Yep. I got yesterday Chow, and then today you, and then I think that's the last one for this year. Probably not going to do one tomorrow, but who knows?
Maybe this will go really well, and we'll try to do another one tomorrow.
Yeah, I've had various people that follow up basically during streams, like, hey, you wanna be on the other one? Yep, let's go. Let's do one more. Chow went on like 3 times in a row, and same with Lars. So
speaking of Chow,
he is there. You got this, and yeah, man. Yeah, we don't see the emoji here in Restream, but awesome. So
I can imagine it though. I can imagine what the emoji would look like.
Yep. I'm actually gonna check out YouTube while, because it won't be the first time the stream drops, or my connection might drop, but we're working on a new connection. So I hope 2020 I have like a 300 Mbits downstream, hopefully. So awesome, cool. And my wife, Derlise, is here as well. She's also checking out. She's a big fan of mine. So good to see her as well. And
yeah, congratulations. This is a fairly recent occurrence, no?
Yeah, this is, we got married 16th of December. So that was
congratulations to y'all. That's awesome.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Yeah. I didn't think it would happen because I was a guy with a big mouth for a long time. Like, nah, that's not for me. Let's not. But
marriage?
Yep. Yeah. Living together, marriage, kids, etc. It's all not for me. But yeah, here I'm a married man. So
I saw the announcement on Twitter that you got married, and I was just like, yes, because I know you had spoken very fondly of your partner last time we had talked. So, yeah, very cool.
No. Thanks, man. Cheers. And yeah, so that's one of the great things. The other great thing is that I start streaming. So you're one of the inspirations, together with Brendan Roberts and Jorge Cano. And I was actually on the 3 of your streams in the same 2 weeks, I think, or the same month at least. And then we started the Discord.
I noticed that happens quite a bit. Like I actually don't know Jorge that well, but I think we follow each other on Twitter. But me and Brandon work together. But it's kind of just like by accident. We see, someone did this show with one of the other streams. Let's get him on. I think maybe you've been in that rotation too recently too. Like I'll need to get Chow on sometime. That would be awesome.
Yeah, definitely. He's great to have on there. And then you can be on Angular Vietnam. So Chow has
nice
Angular community in Vietnam, and they do weekly office hours, and that's in English. So they can have speakers for international, and we were there last week to talk about the Pang stack, the Prisma, Angular, Nest, NX, and GraphQL.
Okay, cool.
So that's something I've been working on, and yeah, pretty nice. And then today, I think, so if people want to get to know you, this is not to cut you off, but I think our streams are generally chock full of code, so I'd like to keep it that way for now at least. So if you want to know more about Zack, he has his own channel, follow him on YouTube, and I think I got his Twitter right here. Follow him. It's just Zack DEROSE at everything except Discord, where it's ZackDR. Awesome. Yes. So today, we're going to do more component store. So this is episode number 6 about component store. And Zack is a big fan of State in general and uses NgRx NgRx Global Store quite a bit. And I was on Zack's show like 3 days ago, and I was like totally full of component store, as what people following my stream know. And we basically got to the point, like, okay, let's B-Man walk Zack through how to do stuff with component store. And so he set up a basic app, how he typically uses component store, the global store of NgRx, and we're going to see how something like that would look like in an NgRx component store. Did I miss something, or was that basically how it went?
I think that's pretty good. I am going to let me start just by running the app so we can kind of see where we're at, and we'll go from there.
Perfect.
So we're using an NX workspace, and I am going to run our server. So the server we're actually going to run is so this is a little node script I'm running that is it's a little bit hacky, but that's all right, right? Like it's an example app. So this is my node script here. Let me just watch to make sure the script starts up.
Yeah.
You'll see I'm starting emulators. Pretty soon we should see it go. It's not going. Let me see. There's maybe I have something running already.
Maybe it's in another tab indeed.
Yeah. Let's see. Is this it already? Oh yeah, there it is. I am serving it somewhere else. All right, so that's okay. By starting the emulator, I have enabled on localhost port 4000. If you go and clone down the repo, there's some instructions for how to do this. But this is something I'm really cool about. So this is the Firebase emulator suite. Can you all see that all right?
Yep, that looks great.
Cool.
And the whole suite looks great, by the way. This is pretty new, right?
This is fairly new. I think they've had maybe the Firestore emulator and the real-time database emulator. Like most of the stuff I think has kind of been there. I don't even know what you do with the hosting emulator, honestly. I've never messed with that. But authentication emulator is brand new. And that's pretty cool to work with. So in the script we just ran there, actually, we went ahead, and if we go to authentication, I threw in a couple users here. So that's me and you, Brum. And I don't know. I don't think we'll get into any authentication stuff today. Maybe we will if we have time. That would be kind of a cool thing, because I think that in particular seems like it would be a really cool use case for component store because of reasons we talked about on my show, which is like if you do this where you stick authentication stuff into your global state, it kind of feels like the whole point is you have this one source of truth. And when you're just copying data over from your other service that's coming in from the Firestore auth, I don't know, something about that just irks me. Like it works fine. Yeah. It works fine, but it would be cool to just have that like pipe in selector instead that just is using the observable from that's actually given from Firebase. Yeah. But yeah, also from that script, we added some stuff into our Firestore database here. So we have this collection called Aeons. This is from an RPG game I've been working on and off for like the last 5 years. I called it Aeons of Ascension. But the idea is like your Aeon is like your hero. So this is like your unit, right? And so you can see we have this one guy in here. His name's Zack. He's got some attack stats, some defense stats, a name. He's got an owner ID, stuff like that, right? Yep. So that's kind of like our back end. Think of that as our back end for what's going on with Firebase. And I'm going to create a new tab here. Let's just make a new one. And we're going to just run nxserve to serve our defaults app, which is going to be our client. As soon as that's up and running, we can take a quick look at what's going on here.
Awesome. In the meanwhile, we can say hi to Ryan, who's also one of the frequent guests in here. Good to see you, man.
Awesome.
Always nice to have residents on the stream.
Very cool.
So that started pretty fast, if you ask me.
Yeah, it's all right. So we got here, welcome to Aeon State example app, and we just have like a single feature here. And we'll see this when we get into the code. But there's like the idea, it's kind of like your classic list view and detail view, right?
Yep, just a CRUD example, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. So I can go into see more. I can select a user and or a hero and see more detailed view about them. If I want to, I can update them. So make them water, submit, and you'll see, that's updating on other stuff. I can delete them. I can add some new ones. So we're going to make B-Man. B-Man, what's your type? What type are you?
It's, I think, air.
Air, okay.
And water.
And water.
I'm not sure if that contradicts, but
I'm pretty sure that's a solid combination. It'll give you some OP stats. Hit submit, and we can see everything going up in here. So one of the things I love about NgRx Global is this right here. If I open up my Redux Dev Tools, I can see now. This is going to go. It's funny. I think Alex is actually using NgRx when he made this stuff for the emulator. I think that must be him. I don't know. But if we go to, we'll jump into. I've got like several versions of this running on different tabs. Right. Let me close some of them out so I can actually figure out which one we're looking at. But yeah, like you can see as we went through. This must be another tab because this doesn't look like what we just did. But let's try this one. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, there's your delete where you deleted it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So here's the thing we just ran where we can see, hey, there's B-Man, this action that came through. So Redux Dev Tools, it gives us like this awesome ledger of all the actions that occurred. Yeah. And yeah, it's pretty cool.
That's definitely I think that's definitely one of the selling points. I actually think the Redux pattern got popular because of Dan Abramov showing time travel in state, and the whole world was like, "Whoa, we never thought about this."
Well, just like playing with that some, I think we could like just go back in time.
Yeah. You can. You should be able to jump, and then it should be. So if you take the first one, this one updated or the edit, and you do jump, it should reflect that, I think.
Almost not. I wonder if something's going on here because we actually should have seen some other actions coming through too. I don't know what's going on with that, but now that we've kind of seen like what's going on, let's look at the code to see how we're actually achieving that, which I think is pretty slick, and we'll see. So I'm going to go. If I look at my apps, typical NX kind of setup. I'm just lazily loading in this Aeons path to get that Aeon feature in. We're doing some stuff. So Angular Fire module here is all just garbage stuff because we're using the emulator. Like we don't want any actual keys. But this is on a separate note. This is really cool to me because I've always wanted to do more Firebase content, but I never knew a good way of doing it without just like throwing out all these keys out there and letting someone else like run amok and potentially drive up a huge bill. So
I think there's two things to it. One is what I would probably do is create a project, grab the videos, delete the project. That's probably the safest bet.
Yeah.
But if you check on YouTube, it's on GitHub, it's full of tokens like these, and it's considered public.
Yeah, these ones should be fine. It's more of like if you put something out there, like an example thing that blew up, you could potentially run up a huge bill just from having something like that. But by doing something like this, where I can just put it up on GitHub, and I have those scripts to run the emulators on the server. This is kind of cool in terms of potential, what we can do to get this stuff in.
I totally love it. And I think you can even maybe take it a step further. It's like, dev mode. If you run it in dev mode, load the emulator. If you run it in prod, I want to run the real deal and connect it to Firebase.
Yep. Like, so we can see right here, we're just using the Firestore emulator. We could also, there's also a token for using the Firebase Auth emulator. And normally you do something in here where you look at your environment and say, is this production? If so, don't pass a value, I think, and then you'll go to the actual one. So it's kind of nice because you can just ship the same code, and it's just depending on your environment, it'll determine which one to point at. But I think that's most of the interesting stuff we're doing in here. Like we're just We've got our store module, just getting it set up with the for root and effects module for root and store dev tools. This is how we give it that name for Redux dev tools, and got a really large Mac shade in there. It's one of those reflex things now. 25 sometimes is not enough, so I just give it a ridiculously high number.
Add zeros to it, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think depending on how important the DevTools module is, if that's the main reason, then you're not going to probably do a lot with component store because there's no DevTools, and that's kind of thing. I personally, and this is something we talked about off camera, I like it, and I'm interested in it, and I make sure that it works when I set up a new project, and I hardly find myself using it.
Yeah.
And this, I think it has a lot to do with what is your debug strategy, and I'm like classically a console logger.
Yeah.
I tend to do more testing where I have like some nice ways to inspect and debug the code. So essentially, I see myself using it basically to review what's the state, and that's it. But I hardly ever use the actions and the parents. But I might be doing something. I might be missing an important feature there. But yeah,
I think if you've got what you need, that's the big piece. My big thing, and we talked about this last time too, was just like wanting, like, my quest at this point of my career is to try to accumulate some mastery. And part of that, I think, is like figuring out when to use a hammer and when to use a more nuanced tool. So like figuring out like the best tool for a certain job. So I think in some ways it's like, it's good to, I'm hoping there's some pieces where it'll be good to use like the global store, other times where it's good to use the component store. And I'm trying to figure out the good balance for that, because right now I'm like always using global store. And I can't think of a good reason to use the other one. So that's one of the things I'm hoping we can take a look at today. You can maybe walk me through converting this feature over to component store, and that will be kind of fun. But it's the horse I know how to ride, So I just go to it. So
I think that's a very valid point. You stated it earlier on. Use what works for you. I think that's the general advice in our industry. Please use whatever works for you. If that's if you're still using jQuery with a PHP backend and it's been for 10 years, if it works, don't change it. Do it.
Yeah. But on a similar note, though, like we talked about this on my show too, but like it's the merry-go-round. This whole thing's this merry-go-round that comes back around every 6 years or so. And like we're just reinventing the same stuff over and over again, it seems like. But I think each iteration tooling is getting better. So there's a reason to stay on that merry-go-round. Like you shouldn't, just because you notice it's going around and around each time doesn't mean you should just leave it and like stay in Cobalt or something like that.
Right? No, totally agree. And definitely keep on experimenting. And let's check how you did the store implementation. So from what I see, and this is also something you mentioned, like one of my issues with the global store has always been it's a lot of code and a lot of files. And what I like with the component store is you can sit it next to your component and it basically belongs there. It's quite strict type to this component. It works there, but you don't need to register. You don't need to push it anywhere else. So at the moment you pick up your module, the folder that has this module with the component, it also has the store, and it's like one portable unit. But you told me like, I tend to do my whole store in one file as well. So this is this is interesting.
Here it is. This is all of it. And let's see.
Yeah.
I didn't think it was this big. It's bigger than I thought. I added some more effects that took some size here, but I mean it's not like massive. Normally I like to keep my files under 100 lines, but this is all right. So if we look at what we're doing here, I'm using NgRx entity, which is just another package coming from the folks at NgRx. Super cool. It's a way to like take like your standard kind of CRUD operations and like take some data model. So essentially what this is doing is I'm creating an entity adapter and I'm giving it this type of Aeon we jump into this is in like some other file here, but this is just a simple interface describing like this is our hero, right? Yeah. This is the shape of what our hero is going to look like. And if we go into our state here, we're just creating an entity adapter, and we're saying it's an entity of Aeons. And what this line is doing is essentially just saying we're just going to say its name is going to be its unique identifier, right? So, once we have that, we're going to get a lot of like free stuff out of that, which helps with not having to do much code. But going into our actions real quick. And I'm going to assume most people know like a lot of the Redux pattern here.
Let's consider that. Yep, okay. That's definitely a fair assumption.
Good deal. So the idea is we're just going to listen. We'll see this later in our effect, but these first three actions are kind of just pointed at the Aeons API. We can kind of see that inside of our braces on the scope here. And the idea is the Firestore, the Angular Firestore package is going to give us this observable already if we listen to just a collection. And it will tell us, is there a new document added to the collection? Has the document been updated, or has the document been deleted? And we're just going to kind of chain these into these specific actions. And if we just ignoring the other actions for now, if we look at our reducer, we can see there's some reducers for those three actions. And these are essentially just mapping to that Aeon adapter we created, which gives us some nice stuff for just like adding a single entity or updating an entity or removing an entity. So this is pretty much a very simple hand-wavy way of saying, let's take all of everything coming in from that observable on the Firestore API. And we'll just use that to populate our store.
So
that's
in a more right, and in a more I'd say more common or more classic pool-based pattern, you would have a list items or fetch items or Aeons get, or that would be another action, another reducer, right?
Well, maybe. So you could the way this example is kind of set up. Let's take a look at our effect. We'll just skip ahead real quick. This is right here. This is the effect we had talked about, where we're just listening to that collection, the state changes on that collection. Right. We're just mapping it depending on what the document change type is. We're just kind of mapping it to those different actions there, right? So in effect, what we get is because this effect is going to start listening as soon as this feature module gets lazily loaded in. We are saying, just give us everything anytime anything changes, which is probably not what you want to do if you're doing like an actual thing in production, because you're going to get way more reads than you actually need. But and you could definitely get more nuanced with this too, where you're saying like taking this observable and only listening in certain situations where you're on, like you could put the router in here as well, right? And just make it so we only listen to these when we're in certain routes. And that could like get us to where we only, listen to the things we need, or like filter these out based on, different parameters. But yeah, this kind of gets us a cool getting started place of just like, right now the API is just pushing to us all of the information, and that's just all going into the store, and it's being managed and in sync because of this. So that makes some really cool stuff. Where if I go back to the app, I'll put this on one side of my screen, and let me just make another tab of this, and we can see as we go through stuff here. If I added Zack back in. And Zack is, caps lock. Zack is fire and holy. That's who I am. That's my thing. I'm pretty powerful, but not as powerful as Brahm here. So I'm going to make myself a little bit less. But as soon as I hit submit, Well, this should have updated. There it is. Wait.
Gotta love demo time.
Yeah, something's going wrong here. But oh, there it is. Yeah. Sometimes you just need to wait for it.
Yeah.
That's odd. It's weird that there's that delay in there. But we can see, like, if we did something like this, maybe this will work. If I change my defense, say, well, maybe my defense is almost as good as Brown's. We'll hit save, and if we go in here, that's not updating either. I don't know. Something's going on, man. Something's going on. That's normally that should update.
Yeah, and I think, but I think maybe we can see if the store at least works. That might be the interesting, because if not, it seems out of control of the app.
Yeah, let's see. I wonder if there's something going on with. Let's go. So this was my Aeon updated. If we look at the action,
it's 4,500 still.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That is misspelled too. That's weird. This is very weird. Oh, wait. Maybe I'm just not looking at the right one. Let me try killing off some of these tabs. I wonder if there's something going on with my other tabs that's like messing this up for other things. But let's see. Oh, I've got multiple emulators open too. This is my problem. This is the story of my life, man. Way too many tabs. Way too many windows.
I think most of us can relate. By the way, Chow shared a comment in chat where he says NgRx store just received a PR that makes it compatible with Redux Toolkit, which reduces some boilerplate, so might make it even more minimal. I think I saw it, but I don't really remember what it was. Chow showed it to me, but I forgot what the detail was. Yeah. But I think so. In general, talking about your app, so one of the things that we chatted about earlier is that if you're using state management in your app and you're using Firebase as data source, at some point you're most likely gonna either fight Firebase a little bit or tame it a bit so that it doesn't spam your store, or it doesn't, what you said, incur huge amounts of reads. And this is one of the reasons why probably with a local an emulator would be easier to develop, because I had cases where I would develop on an instance on Firebase, and then with some infinite loop, I would spam my whole data source, and then it's like, you reached, what is it, like 50K reads or 50K writes or something like this?
It sounds like a lot, but what infinite loop will not come out?
It's like, okay. And I reached it, and it takes a bit to figure it out. Like, why doesn't this thing work? Because Firebase works magically always. So that was interesting. Let me reshare your screen, because it looks like this got lost.
I think whatever happened. This is new. Let's see. I think whatever happened is resolved now. I don't know what it was, to be honest. Let's see. If I were to change this, buff myself even more. There we go.
There you go. Awesome.
So that changed. If we look over on this one, that'll change over here. Yeah. And if we update them this way, put myself back to where I belong. The other window updated well. So okay, we're back.
To get everything straight and all the inspections straight, this is not NgRx working. This is actually two separate tabs, and it uses Firebase to push it through. So if you update it in one tab, it will go to Firebase, store it there, and that will notify the other client that it updates. So this is just for people that are not aware of how Firebase works. And like what we saw in the component store demo, which initially was backed by Firebase, we had to basically stop Firebase emitting all the time, because that's kind of how do you say it? It made our demo obsolete. Like if you want to do CRUD and you want to have it automatically update, that's out of the box already. Like it's what kind of demo? So we started with take one on the Firebase. So we just cut it off directly after the first event, making it behave like a pool-based API, like a REST API or GraphQL endpoint. And then today you're using a local DB in IndexedDB. So we just it's not even connected to something. It's just offline first. So
Yeah. Well, so there's some really interesting things I think you could do here, right? Like in general, so like this is kind of like I might say this might be a naive implementation, but it gets us to where like we're getting everything and our states are kind of in sync with the back end. But I think if with some tinkering, I would be very interested in doing something like this, where like the push-based strategy is all there, but doing something that would limit the number of reads you would do. And I have some ideas for like how you could do that, where like you just have something like a counter for each document, and you would do something where as you like populate your store, you would persist it down into something like local storage or IndexedDB. And the idea would be, okay, I can like first grab like the previous state from disk, essentially, right? And then say, okay, this is where I'm at, and I want to use this as my starting point, and then now start giving me anything new I may have missed from the last time I checked Firestore. And that's where you could get to where you could have this really cool thing where you actually have like reliable access to like the actual date as persisted in the back end, without like getting way more reads than you'd like getting to. You just get the number of reads, because that's like the whole play with Firestore, right? Is you're trying to play around with getting only reads when you need them, because that's what you get charged based on. So if you can do that where you like optimize things so you only get the stuff you need, and part of that would be like taking the code we just looked at, just figuring out a good way of like limiting that based on limiting that effect running based on only getting things when you want. So
so kind of like hydrating and rehydrating your store. Unsafe persisted, and unload, make sure that it loads the data in. But I think again this would be irrelevant of your state management solution, right? These are basically more like what are the concerns you have with a Firebase backend? Because I personally, when I just have a backend that I control myself, I don't really bother about these kind of things up until the moment where I realize, okay, it's super slow loading a list of pages where you do like a huge database query. But I'm kind of happy to not have to count on these, like on most of my projects. I don't do it. So
yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot to be said about this in terms of like giving our web clients like the respect they deserve, almost, right? Like we treat web apps, front end web apps, a lot of times like they're the second class citizen that's just the client. But I think like really this is with web apps being like where we're at now with the single page web applications. I think they deserve more respect. Like I think this is like a legitimate distributed system. So trying to get that to where it's it's behaving that way, and like you said, probably the net difference something like this makes is not that much, but it is kind of cool to just be able to like click on your links and instantly get there, right?
No, totally.
Yeah, and we could work all kinds of other interesting things into this too, like optimistic updates and stuff like that, and just all kinds of different strategies, which would essentially look like a few more operators coming onto here and a few more actions getting dispatched. So. But yeah, cool. It's pretty cool stuff. Just fleshing out the rest of the stuff we're doing here. There are some other actions here. So you'll notice these are the first three were all in the scope of the Aeons API. So that's kind of just listening to that observable coming in from the Firestore API. But we also have these actions that are they kind of map to the different components we have. So you can see my components are over here, all in the one feature lib, and like we mentioned, like all of our codes here in the one file, and I don't think it's too crazy to just do it like this.
I think this can definitely work, and seems like scalable from what I've seen now. What I'd love to see is how you actually retrieve the data in the component. So if we can take a look at the list and the update and delete things.
So looking at our list component, we'll put a template on right hand and the stuff over here on the right. Most of the template's doing most of the heavy lifting. We're just saying our Aeons is equal to the store with this one selector, and we have one method here. And the method, although what method is doing is just dispatching the action. Say and delete the Aeon. And we did so. Again, we're using good action hygiene here, so we're saying like the scope of this is actually the maps to the component we're doing. So
where it comes from.
Yeah.
And then the select actions, because I don't think we looked at selector. The select actions probably passes through to the entity, to the selector it gets from the entity model, right?
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. There we go. And so, and that delete action we saw, so the delete actually doesn't do anything on the reducer. It's kind of like a pub sub kind of pattern here. Like we're dispatching the action, but the only thing that's going to change our state is the stuff coming from the server, essentially. So when we say delete, this is the effect that's going to like handle the side effects there. So we're saying if we ever get a delete Aeon action, we're just going to tap onto that and use our Firestore API and delete that document based on the Aeon's name. So
this is a pure side effect. And I mean, if I were super critical, it's like, hey, what if there's an error message? But let's not worry about that. Let's not worry about that. Yeah,
exactly.
No, totally agree.
Well, so this would also be where if you wanted to do like some optimistic updates, you could do something interesting here, right? Like you could do something in the reducer where, okay, let's actually delete that, but also let's keep listening just to like confirm it later on, and we could like throw a flag in there. You could get interesting, but I think this captures the gist of it, right? So
so we make the observable available line 12 in the component right hand side. This is where we have it, and then in the template on line 3 is where we say Aeons, pass it through the async pipe and make it available.
So that the async pipe is how I'm subscribing, and so this is essentially saying Aeons.subscribe and then like setting this variable in the scope of our template. So now I can just, this will be at this point, will this give me a tailsense? I don't know. I think it does.
Yeah, it's an array of Aeon.
Yeah. So now I can just loop through that with ngFor, and then inside of that loop, I have the one Aeon and can just like do stuff. So this is how, if we go back to our app, let's put this down. And if we go to our list here, so if we see bman, see his types, then we see a link to go to the update page and a button to delete. And just doing this to have good bones, but we could make this prettier without too much effort, I think. So.
I mean, I think most of us know how that will work. So what I think,
that's not what I'm good at.
Right. No, well, me neither. And thanks to Tailwind, I got better at it, but it's still nothing to write home about. In any case, I think what we could do here, what might be interesting, is to basically start out with this list, because that's an interesting thing to start out with. And what we could do is use the same components, because there's not really need to create a new component for listing this. And in the template, basically add a second, maybe an HR line totally at the bottom, an HR to separate it visually. And then below that, just add a new ng container and start working on the implementation with list store. And this way, people looking at the repo can get a good idea of like how these two really look together.
Yeah.
And we're kind of missing then the fanciness where you have like, okay, this component's super clean, but I think it's kind of out of the scope. It might be nice to have like the two implementations here. So
yeah,
what I generally start out with, if I'm in a list component, working on list components, I end up with a list store. So I create a file list.store.ts right next to the component. Okay. That'll be our first step.
So I'll put it just right here with the other stuff. So we'll say list dot
list.store.ts, and this exports a class list store, and this extends, and this is probably a package you need to install. This extends component store, and it comes. And it's component store. Yeah, it's not there.
Let me go. So one thing I've been trying to do recently is to remember to use PNPM.
Nice.
So it's just ngrx / components
dash store. Yep, totally. Cool. That's awesome. First time I see PNPM running, I think. I don't remember. Nice.
So NX just had, we just did an update. Some stuff. Oh, are we having some problems?
I think it looks like you dropped for a second, but you're back.
Maybe PNPM is just too performant.
Yeah, that might very well be the case. Yeah, and if you have a huge connection, which I imagine you have, then it might use up some resources. But maybe. You were saying something. We recently in NX.
NX allows you to set PNPM as your default package manager, I guess package runner. I don't know what the right term for it is, but it's kind of cool. I did some stuff for our marketing where we had one side by side, and PNPM finished in 1/3 the time, which was pretty neat to see. Just starting a new workspace. But yeah, we've got component store now. Do I need to do anything in terms of installing it to the module?
No. It's just a class you can extend, and this is one of the things that I like about it. It's one file really, and it has a custom operator, actually 2 custom operators, which sit next to it. So in total, it's 3 files, but it's one big class, one service, and it has 2 files. So if you want to customize it, you can just pop the file in your project, start tweaking around with the actual component store source code, see how the inner workings are. And this is kind of what I like. It's one simple thing.
Yeah.
Now what we need to do here is provide a generic. And well, yeah, actually you can look into it here, but we need to provide a generic. And if it's list store, I call this one list state. So that would be a nice name. We can just pass in list state. And this is an interface we need to define up here. So we can say interface list state. And I think what we can do is say Eons, property Eons is of type Eon array. And I would make it optional. And we can get into why later, but let's make it optional for now. And then what we want to do, and this makes the store setup, we want to add a constructor here and call super on it.
Let me give us a little more space.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Call super and pass in an empty object. So this is the initial state. So you pass in the initial state. You can pass in the initial state through this. So now we have a store and we have a state and it's empty. Let's go into our component class and on line, let's say 9.5 actually, between 9 and 10, let's add a new line and say providers, which is an array. And this imports the list store. So you don't need to add any object. You pass just in a reference to a list store, and that should be it. Am I wrong here? This should be how it is.
Let me try restarting. I haven't restarted since I installed it, so maybe this is just...
It looks like it's right. And then what we can do is we can inject this one into the constructor. So we can say private list store and make sure that injects. So that's that. And then right beyond line 14, we can say VM $, and this is like a convention. VM $, equals this.liststore.VM $. Now, we didn't create VM $, so this is what we're going to create right now on here. So we say read-only VM $, equals And now we can say this.select, and this allows us to select stuff from the state. So it takes a method, and you can say s for state, and return s dot one slice. But as this is the whole view model, we probably want to have like an object being returned. So what we can do instead of this s.ions, we can just get rid of this for a second and return an object. And here say ions is s.ions. And like from here on, it's just like however you prefer working with objects if you like destructuring stuff. So another way would be inside the select, instead of doing the s, destructure ions there and pass through ions
Gotcha.
as well. So this is kind of like how you're used to working with it. I tend to use this pattern because I like it. It's short and people I work with understand this.
Yeah. Now so this will give me an observable of my list. Cool.
Yeah. So this is something, and this is the view model. So this is basically your public API of your list store, which is a well-defined thing here. So we can change selectors. We might look at it in a later point, but let's for now move into your list component HTML and fix our ng container there on line 16. So we're going to do the same thing, ngIf, and there we're going to say VM $, pipe it through async as VM. So this is something that I got used to thanks to you need to async as syntax there as well. So this is something I got used to. Right now, all of the things I use in my component are vm.aeons. So we can take line 4 to line 13, basically all of it.
Yeah, we should do. If we were better programmers,
this would be a nice UI component, right?
Yeah, or just like do an ng template kind of thing. I don't know. Yeah. I'd have to look that crap up. So we'd want this, but we'd want to say vm.aeons, right?
Yeah, and the rest of it stays the same. So basically, okay, this is an array of aeons, and it comes from the same thing. Now let's make sure that this renders and we don't have any errors.
Yeah.
And I think we can even use or abuse, however you want to say it, the same things.
Yeah. And we don't have anything in there yet, right? So
yeah, and I'd like to have my the element inspector or the console tools, the browser tools open. So if we have any red lines, that we at least.
Let me get rid of that and go over here.
Yeah, okay, looks clean up until now. So cool, we set up the list and now it's time to add stuff. So there's a few ways to go about it. And as you probably know, like component store is fairly new. So there's not a lot of conventions around this yet. So what I found myself doing is set this up inside the same store. So what we can go to the store. So the goal is to set up a listener to Firebase and basically take whatever Firebase does and puts it in there. So we want to inject Firebase here. And this, of course, needs to be available in the scope, but that's like just Angular module stuff. But you have like one big module, which is good.
Yeah. What do I inject again?
Angular Fire Store.
There it is.
Yeah.
Let's call it Firestore. Let's give it
the underscore. Yep.
I always go in between giving my privates underscores and not.
Now there's inside the component store, there's a few native, a few operators, if you will. We already used one, which is the select on line 10. So this is to retrieve stuff out of your store. There's two more that you're going to use very frequently. One is the updater that updates partials of the store, and one is the effect, which triggers side effects.
Okay.
Now, what I actually want to do in this case, let's start with the updater, and let's make an updater that sets our aeons if we receive them, and then we can later see how we use this one. So I put these down the instructor. I only put the selectors above, and then the rest down. This is also pretty personal. We can see read only. Set eons, and set eons is a property and we sign it. It's not a method. So this is kind of counterintuitive at first. So you say is equals this dot updater. And this takes a method. And updater also takes a generic. So here we can say already, hey, this is the stuff we're going to pass in here. So this will be an array of Aeons. So cool. So this is that one. And then this updater takes a method with two properties, state and value. And you've done a lot of NgRx, so I don't have to explain to you how to reduce the state. So it's just going to be the same. So you can have like a
standard accumulation kind of thing.
Yeah, just like return.
So we're going to spread our state, and we're going
to our state and set Aeons equals to value, and then you're probably at some point you're going to be, you know what, the second one in the method actually is going to be called Aeons. But this is our updater. So now we have a selector to get the state out and an updater to pass it in. Now what we want to do next, I would definitely go for that as well. So awesome.
We don't even need this. We don't even need the prior state. Who are we kidding?
I think we need the prior state. I'm not sure. I think we need to pass in the prior state. Destructure it. This is how I've been using it. So let's.
Okay. Well, if we're not even using it though, so you're saying we should still spread it? Yeah.
This is like with a reducer. A reducer always gives back the state, and make sure to give it a comma afterwards.
Yeah. Where's rename symbol?
Yeah. And then line 19. Yep. Awesome.
Here's what I'm thinking though, Bram.
Sorry?
Here's what I'm thinking though. If the only thing coming from the state is the Aeons for now, right? We're just spreading that just to replace it, right? Yeah, that's why I'm saying I don't think we need the previous one. But okay.
Totally.
Minor point.
No, you're totally right. In this case, it's a minor point.
Yeah.
Now, there's a few ways to go about this. As I said, I like to do this in the store. So inside the constructor, we're going to go ahead and say this.set Aeons, which is a method. And this method takes an observable. So what we can say here is this underscore Firebase, Firestore like this, do the collection thing. Basically take whatever you had inside Aeon, but let's make it simple in this case. So this is the collection here. And then we want to say that value changes, I think. Yep, and let's add a pipe and take one, because for now, this is what we want to deal with. I'm not sure how it works.
Value changes, it's
a method. Yeah.
There you go.
And port one. And now, I think if we go back, we should have our list visible.
Cool. Let's see.
It's not. It is not. Okay, I think might be a quick fix to quickly give the dev server restarts. Not sure why, but this.
Well, I think we haven't restarted since.
No, Chow is here to the rescue. Injectable is missing. I've done this all the time. Okay, so injectable.
Okay. That makes sense.
An injectable, for those who don't know it, an injectable doesn't say that this method can be injected at other places. An injectable makes sure that you can inject things inside the constructor. So this is a big misconception I had for a lot of time. So it worked well up until we did line 17 in the store. Yeah. Chow, thanks a lot. Chow is my savior here.
So this is interesting, because this is one of the things I think I'm seeing potentially could be a really cool use case for this, because this is being provided at the component level, which means I could potentially have several of these, each with their own store.
Yes,
that is
you can.
Kind of hard to manage. Like, it's doable, but you got to like really work with that with your global store if you want to get that to work right. Like to have different instances, different slices of the same kind of thing. So
this is what Alex uses in his example. Like, I think it's like Angular State Revised or Reviewed, something like along these lines. And where he explains in the Firebase console, you have like a list of authentication providers, and you click them open, and they have state on their own. They behave on their own. They have a save button. So yes, you can definitely tie it to it. And actually, the workflow demo that Chow built, well, we did it together on the stream, but he did the big part in the workflow demo. We actually have like 3 or 4 stores nested, and they work together. Yeah. The awesome thing is, this list store can be injected in all the children. So they can just get a hold of this list store and basically check what's happening in the parent level. And like, you want to refresh the list of the parents, you can just go here.
Yeah. Well, I would think too, if we wanted to say, well, we actually want this, we want one instance of this list store across multiple components for whatever reason. We should be able to just provide this at the module level.
Yeah, or provide it for root. It's just any other service at this point. So this is kind of nice, and this is also what I like for it. So I've used it for the team selector on our demo. This
actually feels like super Angular-esque in a way maybe NgRx Global Store isn't, right?
Yeah.
Because like we're using the provider system, the provider mechanism, rather than NgRx. You're just kind of, it's like the Lego blocks almost. Like if we look at my state over here, just a bunch of like smaller pieces, smaller Lego blocks being exported, and you just kind of inside of the component, you just take the pieces you actually care about. So yeah, this is definitely interesting.
Let's check in the app to see if it works, because I'm curious about that. Go to the Aeon feature, not yet. Injection tokens. What is this? Angular Firestore. Is Angular Firestore available in this module?
It should be.
If it's all one big one, yeah.
Yeah.
Aeon feature module. Angular Firestore, it's not there. I think it needs to be there, but it's kind of interesting that it's.
Yeah, why wouldn't it be working? I think I was providing it in the app module.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it should be available everywhere, right?
Yeah. I think I need to do Angular Firestore module too as well, right?
I'm interested why it does work in your global store though.
I am too. Let's see if this fixes it though.
Yeah, Chow, if you have any idea, make sure to chime in.
Injection tokens. Yeah, it's looking like we're not providing it somehow. How was I providing it before?
So inside the in your store, inside your state management solution, how we're doing anything special here? So here it's just injecting. Okay, nothing special here. And where is this one provided? This Aeon state, is that in the Aeon module?
The effects. Right. So there are effects. If we go to the Aeon feature module, just right there.
I think maybe just importing Angular Firestore module here should be a thing, not with calling for root. This might be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I think this is just takes it like this.
Cool.
Yeah. And maybe together with a restart of the server, it might help. It might not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll see.
Wouldn't be the first time that it fixes an issue.
I know, right?
Yeah. Are you using HMR, by the way?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
Hot module reloading?
Yeah.
Oh man.
Is that on default out of the box in 11? This is using 11.
So. It's not, but it's like one parameter away, so you can just put it in your start script.
I don't know. Part of me doesn't like that. Like the hot module reloading. Like I'm used to having things the one way. I feel like I'd almost be confused if
I definitely suggest checking it out because it's amazing. Yeah, the feedback loop is so quick.
Yeah, that's fair. But I just feel like there's some things. Okay, there we go. We're sick now. But there's some things, man, where I feel like hot module reloading could trick you into thinking you're into a state you can actually get to when you can't. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I had the concerns, but I'm sold on it. Basically, it didn't bite me in the back yet, and it was different like three Angular versions ago where you had to hack it in yourself.
Yeah. How do we set that up? Can we do that real quick?
Yeah, you can just go to your package.json where you start this thing and pass in. So at some point you have an ngx serve where you serve your app. Maybe it's on your scripts all the way up here in start and you ng's and line 9 and say nx or ng serve --HMR.
Oh, okay.
Now this is considering that ng serve starts this app and it doesn't start the other app. It's kind of, if you say ng serve Aeons --HMR, then it will for sure work. But just tag the --HMR on the.
I don't think that would do it because I'm using NX for, like, I'm not running npm run start, right? I'm running NX serve.
Okay, just tag it on there.
Doing HMR here. Yeah. HFT FML, dude. There we go.
Awesome. So this should now magically appear, and it kind of loses because you're switching around anyway. So it kind of loses the behavior. So what I'm interested in is if we could open a second tab on the site, and this is something I'm just interested in how this works, if this works as expected. So if in your solution right now, because that's how it's wired up, you will actually see an update happening. So if you let's say if you add one or you delete one, it will pop up. Let's add a dummy one so we can delete it later on. So if you add a new Aeon in the right-hand side, or it doesn't really matter, but if you add it here, let's add Chow.
Chow, you're in. Chow, what's your types?
Yeah, I think Chow is ground. How do you say it? Earth. Earth. Seems a very stable person. Earth and water.
Nice.
Yep.
Let's see. We can update it later, though.
So, okay, here. Now what happens is that this didn't update one, and this is because of the take one. So I think we don't need to take one, but in our example, this was like what we did to make it a pool-based API. But I want to mimic what you're doing, and in your design, it's important that two tabs update. So I think we can safely get rid of the take one, and this should keep on working as expected.
Cool. So we'll go to our, what do we call it?
List store.ts. And we can get rid of the file tree and the console down there to give us some more real estate.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So now this is kind of the basic setup. So you have a view model, and this is also the way I start, including forgetting the injectable, because this happens to me like daily. I start with creating a new store and setting the state, then provide the super to set the initial state. Then I wire it up in a component. And at the moment I say, oh, that VM $ doesn't exist yet, I go back and I create my VM with whatever I want to expose. And then a step afterwards, getting data in. So this is kind of the iterations I go through. Mm-hmm. What I think we can do right now is look at the effect, how we would delete it. And that basically gives us the whole list store and anything we need. So we can say read only down below on line 25. We can say read only. And this convention that Chow and I started working on is called this delete Aeon effect. So you can see in the name of the thing that this is an effect. This equals this.effect, which also takes an generic, the type of whatever you're going to pass in. So I think you're passing in one Aeon. So that will be the type. And this is now this method. The convention here is to take whatever the property you have. So this is Aeon $, because it's going to be an observable. So this is going to be an observable of whatever you trigger in this thing. So Aeon $, fat arrow, and then Aeon $.pipe. And then inside the pipe, inside this pipe, this is where your action is going to happen. So this is basically your setup. So you set up an effect, you tell it what it gets, and you make this, you basically take the, you pass in the method that takes the observable. So what we can do here is just, for instance, let's start with a tab and just do tab console log and then wire this thing up. Yeah. Just like this. Make sure that the import gets there. And then inside our list component.ts, what we can do inside our method.
Sorry.
Inside the list component.ts, the file you have open on the right-hand side here, inside the delete method, we can just do the same. So we can make it delete in both stores.
Yeah, delete.
Or you can do it. Yeah, or you can do it that way.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And then we say
this list store dot delete Aeon effect, and you pass in.
Okay.
And you pass in the Aeon because this is because of the generic that you set. And so if you don't pass a generic, it will not take an argument. And TypeScript will start screaming at you.
Yeah.
And so we need to go into our list component and update this call to this method. So we're actually calling the right method. So in list component.
Yeah.
Yes.
HTML here, we're going to say delete.
Yeah.
From composer.
Pass in the Aeon, and then we can quickly give it a run to see if it works. Or if you want to like ask something about this, what we're doing, that's also fine, of course.
Yeah, okay. Let's run this. I hit save, so we should be here. And if I delete Zack,
so it doesn't delete because we need the console log. We log it inside the console.
Gotcha. So we should see instead here. Inside of my console,
there's an object, and this is the object that you're doing. So okay,
makes sense. So let me ask you this, because there's something that's not clicking for me just yet. If we go to the list store, we're saying, so we're creating. I mean, we're essentially creating an operator here, right? Like this is a observable. This is a function that takes an observable and returns a new observable.
Yes,
like that's an RxJS operator. Is it just like doing an of what we pass in from the list component store?
The way, I don't think it's an of. I think it's one big behavior subject, and it's all wired together in one big observable chain, or one big tree of actions and things. And I cannot tell you the details. I'm not the person for that. Alex can definitely enlighten you in this part, but
sure. But so this is like saying, this is like every time we do this, we're like sending a signal out that says, hey, here's this.
This is like your dispatch.
Gotcha.
Zack is actually right. It's an of, says Chow, if you pass in a value. Okay. So yeah, that's an of in behind the scenes. Chow does know how this works.
Yeah, Chow is Earth. So that's
cool.
Oh
yeah.
That's
Chow
really
is also Earth. Yeah.
It's cool to see how you pegged him for it, man. That's awesome.
Awesome. So cool. Okay, so it's an observable stream, but this is the way I like to think about it. And what I like, it's observables in. So line 19, you pass in the observable right away. Now you can already think about, oh, you know what? Route.params from your activated route injection works in there as well. So you can say, oh, whenever the route updates, either update this state with an updater on line 22 or run this effect on line 27. You can have an effect that takes in a string, which is your route parameter, and then you can, switch map into something and fetch your data.
Yeah.
Talking about switch map, I mean, if this is clear at this point, we can move on the delete. Otherwise, I'm happy to.
So we saw from what we just saw with what was in the console log, we saw calling this method that we're setting up right here. Yeah. We are essentially we're listening to this observable, and right now we're just console logging it. But what we're wanting to do is, I'm guessing, we're just going to want to take that Aeon, and I mean, we could probably, since we're already listening inside of our set to the collection, right? We would probably just do something in here where we would tap it the same way. We would call delete from the Firestore API, right?
And what I would do, and let's take it one step up. So what I'd like to see for a second is in your current state, how you actually do the delete command, because that's the one we're going to borrow.
We could probably just copy and paste that right on over. Let's see. Wrong file. Stupid mouse. There it is. All right. So delete. Here's my effect for deleting.
Yeah. So let's only get line 109 because this is the only thing I'm interested in right now. And then I would like to suggest that we don't use tap, but we use another map like either switch map, exhaust map, or I think and then do it properly, because we're going to wrap this promise in an observable using from, and then just use it as an observable. So which I think is the proper way to do this.
Sure. Okay.
I think switch map is not the best one, but it's probably good enough for now. I don't think we're going to frenetically hit delete buttons and see if we get race conditions. So let's do a switch map. And then X will be your local variable. That's an Aeon.
Yeah.
Just hit one in. This is one Aeon. And then we want to wrap this whole observable. I think delete returns an observable.
I think it's actually a promise. Let's see. Yeah, it's a promise.
Yeah, this is what I had in mind. So we want to wrap it with from. So
hang on. What's this? What's this about right
You're
here?
missing a parentheses, I think.
Got it. So you can switch map to a promise.
Okay.
It's going to really just wrap it in a from anyways. So I think this is good.
Cool.
Right?
And now we want to, no, totally agree. And I think I remember, I think what we can do now is pipe on the switch map. So on line 31, directly here, say .pipe. And then use a cool operator. So this should be, no, I think.
Just another operator after the switch map?
No, we don't want to do an operator after the switch. We want to actually say .pipe on whatever promise we do. So I think.
Well, then we do need from. Sorry. Yeah. I didn't see where you were going well enough, man. It's all right. Let's get from in here.
Yeah, and then .pipe on here, so that if this one breaks, it doesn't break the whole observable chain. And now we're going to use a custom operator that comes from RxJS component store, which is tap response.
Okay.
And tap response is does a tap side effect. It takes two parameters. Both are methods. One is for the handling of the action, and the other one is for the handling of the error. So you can say one fat arrow here, comma, and this is am
I doing this right?
No, it's actually two of these methods. So it takes two properties. So one of the handle action is just the result. So this
like a promise. Yeah, I got you. So this handle blah. This is not even it.
Yeah, so you can just have one is the result, like res or res, and then second is error. There you go. Awesome. So in the error is simple, so we can just console log that something went wrong.
Yeah. Pardon my typing.
No worries, man. It's late in the evening.
You're kind to make excuses for me. But okay, so this is like the results, right?
Yeah, so let's log out the result. Maybe we can do something or not. And I think you need to import the tap response, and then the delete should work.
Yeah, okay. Awesome. Okay.
So this makes sure that you handle your error and that you do it correctly. This is what the tap response kind of forces you, and it doesn't rethrow the error. So it rethrows empty, which makes it nice because it doesn't break any other parts of your chain. So you can, as long as you make sure that on line 39 you handle it properly, so either instruct the user or you log it or you store it in state, whatever, then from that moment it's gone. So let's see how this behaves in the browser.
Cool. Alrighty, so now if I actually delete Zack, we should see it be gone. Is that correct?
Yep, that's what I expected. And there you go, it's gone. So nice. Fair enough. And then in the console, we see undefined. So it doesn't really give back something else. So that's not an issue with. And this was while typing. So this is one of the downsides on HMR.
HMR, dude, HMR.
Yeah. Yeah.
I told you. No, I'm just playing. The HMR is pretty cool. I'll give you that.
Yeah. I definitely recommend it.
Yeah. So Chow just said something in here. Tap response is usually where we want to call a set state, patch state, updater to update the state with whatever we return from the side effect. Tap response. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So now let's go back to the example for a second, because this is not really common in the sense that if we delete an item, the backend knows this and gives us new data. This is not a very common pattern. In most APIs, you either need to go ahead and ask in your store, like, hey, delete the item with this ID or this name in this case, Or what I often find myself doing is giving it another pool. So you have like a load eons effect. And you basically trigger again that it refetches the API. I think that's more the pool-based backend.
This is like a REST API we're going against instead. We just do that. You'd have another effect in here because after deleting it, we'd probably delete it locally from our store, but we'd want to actually send out that request as well.
Yeah. Right. So, but this is your way. So this is where Firebase, and this is also the reason we stepped off of it, because we were fighting Firebase to demonstrate how an actual store would look like if you're not having all this fanciness. So
yeah.
But this is kind of it, and these are the basics that you need to know about. And
so let me ask you this, Bram, because I'm just and maybe Chow too if you're chatting around in chat. This was not what I was expecting. What I was expecting was almost so this list store was kind of specifically for our list component, right?
Yeah.
Which means like we'd probably have to do something similar for the other probably not the form, but for adding and the detail and the update component. We probably want to do something similar. I was thinking instead this would just be like more of an Aeon store, and it would look like I was imagining. Well, we could provide this at root kind of deal.
You can, and like as I said before, it's just any other service in Angular. And I think, and this I expressed it in the stream before, I think component store is a bit deceiving with its name. I agree that's a good name, but it's also makes it a bit more limited than as is, because if you say line 12 and you make it provided in root, and you don't need to inject it inside your list component TS, you don't need to add it to the providers, and it will keep on working.
Yeah, it's like a singleton at that point. So.
Yes, and right now it ties into the lifecycle of the component, which is a nice feature by itself because you don't need to do any cleanup. And we get all this awesomeness without a subscribe, which is not new for somebody coming from NgRx, but it's new for people that are using subscribe throughout their code base.
Yeah. Oh, that gets messy sometimes, man. When you see subscribes. But yeah, this is cool. There's some things I don't like about it, just viscerally, man. The super and the extends component store. I've got bad experience with classical inheritance. I don't like but I mean it seems kind of limited here to so you had mentioned like just going into the component store. I guess this is the DTS. Where's the
this is DTS. If you go into it's I think, or this might be only the DTSs. Yeah. I'm not sure, but you can see here already from the API structure, you can see it's a super minimal API.
Yeah.
So it uses the ng on destroy to do all the cleanup, and you see that you might even update one of these. But there's a few things that go around, and I think in total the source code, I'm not sure if I'm correct here, but I think that the source code with comments is like 500 lines. So if you want to understand what the library does,
I remember Alex saying that. Yeah, I'll have to go spelunking in there a little bit, because it seems like the API for this is at least fairly small. So we have our updater.
Now, updater set state is what we didn't call, but set state is what you normally do if you load stuff in. Then you set, and now check this out. There's a ton of overloads here, so it's even large by having comments and overloads and imports. So it's a pretty minimal solution, and it's all based around NgRx behavior subject, replay subject. I think replay subject. But yeah, this is basically what's there, and then you have set state, which I use often, and patch state. For patch state is for only updating a slice. So if you just want to do like, I just want to set loading to false or to true, and this might be a nice thing to update it a little bit, enhance your store a little bit, maybe add a loading property, and this is something you would set to false inside the super, so that you don't have to pass in an empty object.
Yeah, this is neat. Oh. Gotta love TypeScript, right?
Yep. And actually,
so I'd been having this conversation with a friend about the dangers of TypeScript. Because like there's one thing to have like your TypeScript and your typing so that you're like confident about things, right? But then you like get down this kind of dark path at a certain point where it's like I could do this typing even better. But oh man,
and check line 199.
Oh gosh, let's see. 199.
Because 199, the last part, could be added more as needed. So, and we actually, Chow and I, while doing this and while building more complex examples, we ran into like 4 is a little bit is not too much, and we can look at how you actually use this. But this is basically combining.
This looks exactly like the selector stuff you do in NgRx Classic. So this is the projector function right there. Yeah. So it's pretty much like you pass in the 3. You pass in some number of observables, right? And then you take the value as your last parameter. You take a method or a function that takes something from each one of those and then returns something new. And that's like your new observable is going to be based off of that projector. Yep. This was stuff I've been diving deep in recently because I just did an article on like playing around with the create selector factory and NgRx store. So that was
but it's same stuff and it works the same, and this also holds true, I think, at least from my experience, my short experience with this tool is you probably do yourself a pleasure if you do a lot of stuff in your selectors and you make them smart. So let's say, and this is something that occurred to me when working with Chow, what I was doing, like old thinking there, I was like checking, you know what, I'm not loading, and I'm also I don't have any items, so I'm going to show like there's no stuff, like basically your empty state. And then Chow said, yeah, we should definitely have a selector on this that just says is empty and move this logic into your selector. So that kind of holds true here as well. And then as you already noticed, this basically recomposing your selects or your observables using this is totally possible. And we kind of run into the limit where 4 is like a little bit. And I also don't need 20 because then I just need to split it up into more stores. But like having like maybe 6 or 8, that would be already.
Yeah. It feels like there should be something where, I don't know. I don't think this is a thing, but like some it should be able to take like, so you should be able to just say with like TypeScript
how many
just like some, like spread it. You have some list of observables and then the last one's this, and then that is going to be like then just rest those first several arguments. This, I don't know. It seems like it should be a thing. Like I said, I want to get better at TypeScript this next year to try and figure things out.
Definitely check this out. And I think what Chow actually mentions here is I tend to think of component store as a service with behavior subject that everybody has been trying to create but never got it right until component store. And
so true.
Yeah. So I always found myself.
This is the funny part too, right?
Sorry.
It's so easy to get the behavior subject with inside a service wrong, very quickly.
Yeah, and I mean it's super powerful, and this is also where lies its danger, I think. And I've had a lot of help by having 4 operators that I can work on with my state and have it all being so minimalistic, because in the end, this is what I end up using for most of my things. And I found myself creating a service or having like, you know what, this doesn't deserve a service. I just go ahead and pop a refresh behavior subject on my thing because I want to refresh, click the button, do a next on the refresh observable and make that trigger your API call.
Right.
It's not a weird use case. And if you can fit it in like, what is it? Maybe 10 lines of code and it's still pretty clean. It's not end of the world ugly, but it's not at all scalable. I cannot pick that code up and move it somewhere else and just tweak it till it works. Whereas with this one, it's all in one file.
Yeah, I feel you. Well, so one of the big things for me too, like a big motivator for me doing stuff like this when I use Firebase is Firebase is just such it's a cool API for sure, but it's a very unique API.
Yeah,
I feel like in some ways that's on purpose. Like I don't really fault them at all for this, but it's probably in some ways like build your app with us and then stick with us so that they make it sticky that way.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but like if I ever wanted to move away from Firestore at some point, the effect of my change would be switching this out. I'd need a new a new service or something here. If I went with something just like pull based with REST, I'd have to do something there, and I'd pretty much just rewrite this one effect, and then I'd pretty much be okay, right? Like I'd be migrated away from Firebase. That's a big thing for me too, and I think you get very much the same thing out of here, right?
No,
like you do a similar thing here. Sorry, go ahead, bro.
No, I definitely agree. It's I think the word for that is vendor lock-in, and that's basically what you were describing. Like you write something along that way, and the more imports from at Firebase or any other cloud provider for that matter you have, the more tight your app is. And I'm very much a person that wraps around third-party libraries almost always. Like there's exceptions. I'm not going to wrap around NgRx because it's going to be used throughout my whole app. There doesn't make sense at all. I might use like a toast or something UI based that's like super simple and just does one thing and forgets about it. But having the data, I would always have a service that exposes the observable. And when I use Firebase in some projects, I do mostly prototype level. What I end up with is a reusable service where I just pass in the name of the collection and it has like read, create, update. It's also all observable then, so I don't need to have promises. I can just forget about promises. And this is something I've been doing with Firebase quite a lot, but I don't think you can get to 100% abstract. And I don't think that's really should be a goal. But in your store, if I were to review it, I would definitely ask like, hey, let's move this out to a service, so it's separate. But yeah, I think it's always difficult where to cut the line. I always like making abstractions. I always compare it with a butcher. Like if a butcher looks at a cow, he knows exactly where to cut slices and where the good pieces are and where not. If I would have the same cow and the same knife, I would have no clue. Like I wouldn't. Yeah, I know how to cut, but I probably even wouldn't cut. I don't think I'm capable of doing that. But that's a whole other story. But like this butcher sees the thing and he knows where to cut the meat. And I think for us developers, if you want to get better, it's easier to figure out like, okay, I'm going to draw the line here. Yeah. Everything besides it is my abstraction, and everything on outside of it is basically my public API. Yeah, that's interesting. So you'd say in some way, rather than just injecting this Angular Firestore into my effect, you'd be thinking, let's put that inside of a service and just okay. I'd sit next to this one, to the Aeon service, or if you want to do it in one file, you can. But for demos
here, and we'd be doing something where we'd like wrap this up. The state changes to something. We'd wrap this up.
So this definitely this.service.delete Aeon. Then the next one, this.service.update Aeon, this.service.add Aeon. So these ones are the more obvious one. Then the thing you do with splitting your messages up into different actions that you're then going to repass. This is something I'd have to think about. Like because again, there's not a lot of APIs that give you one stream of updates, deletes, and modifications in a fluent basis. I think Firebase is probably one of the only ones. It's the only one I know of that's like relevant.
Same. And to like beyond that too, like if you wanted to create a like for like API, that's steep. Like that WebSocket with that'll let you know these kinds of things and syncing that to your data store. That's that's some serious vendor lock-in, man.
Yeah.
Going to something like REST-based wouldn't be that hard. You'd kind of have to rethink a lot of this stuff though, because like grabbing, pulling, like we'd have to be pulling a lot more often specifically on certain actions or certain router events, which it's not that bad to do. I don't think. I've definitely done a lot of things where like the front-facing part of my store is like exactly similar to this without using Firestore, like just using a pull-based API, like a REST kind of thing. So a lot of this is based on that experience and just saying, if I change my backend, I want to at least have my components in a place where I don't have to use them. So.
Oh, totally. I think when you talk about draw the line, you have to draw the line somewhere, right? And you have to at some point make the decision, I'm going to connect to this. And even if you pick REST, there might be some moment in time where they say, are we going to hop onto GraphQL with this app, or we're going to, like, whatever the next new thing is, like stuff it all in FaunaDB for that matter. It doesn't really matter. And I try to make my software portable in this sense, that I like to have stuff that I can just pick up and throw in another app, because this is also something I see myself doing all the time. Like I right now I have a few things in a store that work, and when I need a store that lists items and does the CRUD stuff, I take it from the one that works and I pop it in and do search and replace, and then I'm done in 2 minutes. And
oh, dude, I'd love to. I've been kicking around this idea for a long time, but trying to do something like there was this old library that came out when Angular was first, getting released. It was called Angular Tactics. It seemed really cool. The idea was like there's these different tactics, like optimistic updates might be one. The idea was you just give like this very when you do an optimistic update, for example, there's like one solution that you can do. There's probably like, if we're thinking of like the realm of forms, there's some perfect solution to this somewhere out there with the perfect number of parameters. And if we could get to that and like have like really smart people develop what that is and just expose this function or this operator or something that just let you say optimistic update, pass in this observable, pass in that observable, we're done. That would be awesome. And I would love to do something like that, like just a wrapper on top, kind of like just like a puzzle piece connector between Firestore and NgRx and NgRx entity, maybe component store now too. Because I could definitely see like the exact things I'm doing here. I could just make an Aeon store for this using the component store, and it would be very similar. I could just like cut and paste most of this code in, to be honest, and just like move it around just a little bit. But yeah, very cool.
And this comment we didn't I didn't highlight it yet, but you can use entity with component store. This is something Chow gave away, and
interesting.
Yeah, so I think this definitely stuff to explore, and this is like for me the reason to go build this component store playground with, and luckily I got somebody as awesome as Chow working together with me, because he's super knowledgeable in this field. But basically get an understanding of how this would look in using this new tool, and definitely compare it with other stuff. So I'd love to have like somebody implement this component store, but with like, let's say Akida, and then now here. Now our set eons is broken, line 26. Don't get received by line 21. Line 26 is broken. So here we need to say eons, and this is now your state. So here you need to say entity state. How do we update? In entity state, how do you update? In entity state, we use a method for this, I think.
Yeah, we'd have to do like...
No, we don't change this one. This one stays the same. We still pass it into the updater. In the updater, line 26, this is where we need to say eons, semicolon, is now state.eons, and then the method dot, whatever we use to get entities in there. So that entities dot load, I think. What is the syntax for loading in entities inside the store? Can we switch to your Aeon state for a second?
Yeah.
See how you do the add one, add many. Is that the one? The adapter, we need to have an adapter. Of course, we need to have an adapter.
Yeah, I was thinking that. So we'd say, we'd probably want to just do it like this.
We want to have an adapter first. So we have the entity state, but in order to work with this state, we need to have an adapter.
Well, I think I think we should just be able to use like you should do this. You should be able to use this one, right? If we just export this.
Okay. Yeah, I guess.
That would work, right? I think so. Let's see.
I guess. So then Control-Z this one, what you had here, because I think you were on the right path. And then on line 26, after the semicolons, pick up this adapter. So get the adapter in here.
What did I call this? Sorry. Aeon adapter.
Aeon adapter. You're pretty consistent.
It's not coming.
Oh, love VS Code imports. I don't know.
Sometimes it's very weird when it works. It doesn't. There you go. Okay.
So, and now on line 27, we say dot. And now we can set add many, I think. Add many. There you go. And now pass in the Aeons and the entities that we got from this method. So this is a very similar thing.
Yeah, but I don't think we need to spread this anymore, right? Like we could just do like this.
Well, does the Aeon adapter return the whole state? Then we don't need this.
Yeah.
We just return this.
Well,
I don't know what the API is for this.
Yeah, because the Aeons is an entity state of that.
Yeah.
Well, if we did like this, so we cut out that list state, we just did like that.
Oh, dude, you're even gonna make it more fancy, yeah. And now,
we'll make it more fancy or just make it more broken, dude.
Yeah,
one of the two.
I think you can now inside this line 16, inside this curly braces, if you get rid of Eons there, the word Eons like right before your cursor, if you get rid of this and you do IntelliSense, like what is it, control space, common space, now you have the entities here and the error. So you can say entities and error and expose and expose that.
I don't think we have an error on it.
Oh, I thought it was there, but
no, but like we have the IDs on here.
The IDs, yeah, that's the thing. But I'm
not
sure.
Maybe just say that.
Well, now you can say Aeons semicolon is entities, so that at least the public API in the place of our component is the same. So if you say Aeon semicolon and assign it to whatever we select, the entities.
Aeon semicolon and then what?
Entities, pass in the entities that we get from the state. So this should be the public API. And now what we need to do is initialize on line 21. We need to initialize our state.
What I'm worried about, Bram, is right now the view model our template expects is an array. So I wanted to just do this, which was take our IDs and map that over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I got that.
To use and put the ID here. Come on, VS Code. Work with me now. Why is this not working? Is this not an array?
ID string array should be.
What?
Yeah. I mean, we probably need to check out in more detail how to marry these two together. But if you can pop it into an observer into a behavior subject, then it should work equally, whatever you put in there. And this is, I think, one of the important things. What I really like is nesting these things, so you don't have one big store, but you rather nest them. So in case of what you just suggested, like, hey, I need to have a separate store for detail and for add, that's true. And one way around this is to create an overarching component. Make sure that everything routes through this component. So a big overarching, let's say, call it a Aeon feature shell component, if you will, which is a shell component around these things. You provide the store there, so at least it's lazy loaded and it's scoped for that part of your app. You cannot inject it at some, like there's a difference between doing it this way in a shell or doing it like provided in root. You don't want to accidentally get this store somewhere and do stuff.
Wait, when you're talking about the shell, would that be similar to providing it here inside of our module?
No, well, if you do it with, you can either do it, you can do it several ways. So you can add it to providers here and then it will work regardlessly. Or if you want to do it a more imperative way, I'd almost say you can wrap these routes inside a component, inside a shell component. So make sure that line 16 to 19 are children of one other component and provide it there.
Gotcha.
And then you do the VM $ up there, route everything through it.
And so this is another view model as inputs to the children component. Or?
Yes, you can just inject. You can inject the. You can do exactly the same thing. So you inject it to the view model, ngF view model. So most of my templates right now that are not presentational components start with an ng container that exposes the view model. That's like all my new apps that I'm working with components or do this in the pattern. And like initially, it's bad practice, and you'd never do this in a normal situation with a normal API because if ngF returns falsy, you don't get anything rendered. So in a classic setup, but in the case of the component store, we're actually going to pass up in an object anyway. It's either an empty object or something else. So you're always having a value there.
Yeah, NgRx let should help with that too.
Yeah, NgRx let is definitely a solution for that one as well.
Yeah, I've actually had some problems with that, or it actually wasn't working as well as ngIf. So
okay, interesting.
I'm a bit gun shy about that one. I actually don't remember what the exact issue was, but yeah, just I've like hit my head against it for like 5 minutes, and I was just like, why am I doing this? Just went back to ngIf.
ngIf. Yeah, I've worked around the issue before by I think I actually mentioned this on one of your streams when you had Lars on. I was like, well, I sometimes just pass in an object that says error. I can't find stuff, so it at least emits. Move on with my life. And
well, you can do exactly that, and just like we said, an object will always be truthy. So just take whatever that thing is, and even if it's false, just throw it in an object, man.
Just wrap it in a nice object.
Yeah. Wrap it in an object and just structure it out just to waste some cycles, but make it work. Those cycles are pretty quick. We're at like what, 4 gigahertz these days?
I mean,
that's pretty quick. We can do that.
Totally. Yeah, man. No, and different ways to go about it. But I think most of the stuff should be pretty self-explanatory from here on out. I would definitely suggest not to start entity state right now. It's definitely something nice to experiment, but I wouldn't build my apps on it just yet before having a bit more. Probably, I can imagine Chow coming up with an example, and otherwise we're going to build one in the component store playground, so you can definitely check it out.
Yeah, I want to play with this some more for sure. I'd love to just like take exactly the same kind of approach I took in here, but just like throw this into like a just like an Aeon store, I guess. That would do like very much the same thing. And then even if I maintain this list store here, I think we could like just inject the Aeon store here rather than the
No, totally. So. You can inject whatever you want here. So activated route is one of the things I use all the time right now. Pass the route into an effect or an updater.
I'm undoing the words here, but I'm using that right here, right? The activated route.
Yeah, exactly. So we can look at how this works, but you know how to pipe data from Firebase in, so this is exactly the same. And this is also what I would suggest to look into when we talked about Firebase authentication and not duplicating state. The state is going to be duplicated. It's going to be live in 2 places, but it's not going to cost you more than 1 line. So you just like maybe 3 lines in total. So you add this thing in the constructor, you just pass it right into the updater, and you make sure that the updater updates state. And then in your derived state, you say, okay, I don't have user, so I'm not logged in. So this derived state is something we don't keep track of. That's just a reactive result of whatever Firebase passes back.
Yeah, dude. One thing I'm very interested in is I've been going through like the Epic React stuff a little bit. We talked about this on my show a little bit. It's very interesting to see how React plays with state. like it's very cool to me. Like it gets very much into that thing where you have, I feel like there's almost a very set difference between what is like actual data versus what's derived state. Because then you get to like, well, your data is obviously an object, and your derived state, you obviously would just use a function to like call that on that data to get to it, which is like, it's similar to what we do in Angular, but those just using observables, you get a lot of control and a lot of like, you can do a lot of interesting stuff around that and have a lot of very precise control over it. But it feels like almost in React you don't need that kind of control, which is kind of interesting. But also like the lines there are very fuzzy. Like with the whole thing with the behavior subject inside of a service, like the classic thing was you just have your behavior subject in there, so that's actual data. And then you have like, but that behavior subject itself is private, but the public thing you expose is an observable, which kind of looks like derived data, but it's like not really. That's actually the behavior subject. Like there's actual data beyond this. So, man, it's almost like a more robust tool set in Angular. I feel like you get. Which probably has its advantages and disadvantages, but I feel like most people I've seen working with Angular aren't taking full advantage of like the ArcGIS tool set you get. Versus,
I mean, personally, I think I did a count on one of my bigger apps of this year. I think I used like 7 operators in total. Yeah, and then that's the obvious one.
That's a good app. Like when you get to apps where you're using like all of them, that's where it's like it's hard to maintain those, because like you could probably do that if you're the one who wrote it, but otherwise it's like it's like looking at the rantings of a mad person.
No, that's Ben Lash level stuff there. That I'm not worthy.
I'm not worthy either, man.
But my.
That's my point. Like we should try to be. I don't know. I'm sorry.
No, but definitely agree. And for me, it's like map, tap, switch map, plug, like these kind of things, like the very common ones that most people understand and know how to use. And I often don't need any anymore. I went into several RxJS rabbit holes. I actually gave some workshops about it. I really like it, and I'm glad that I understand it. I'm glad that I embraced it. But boy, it was an obstacle initially. And this is like one of the main things we see in the Angular Discord, discord.gg/Angular. I have to say it this way. Discord.gg/Angular. On our Angular Discord.
I'm user number 10.
Yep. Yeah. Just
you're like there, so I can't overshadow you. But
I'm number 2. I'm actually next to Steve.
Nice.
I was in there before the bot, and Chow was like number 20. I think he was also like one of the OGs. But we digress. One of the things you see there, newbies coming on. So I like to think we're a newbie friendly zone, which is good. So a lot of people help the newbies, and you're not being judged. But one of the things that happens is developer comes on and has some experience with another framework as Angular, and they're like, yeah, but I just want to use async await because that's how I write code and that's how I do stuff. And like you run into change detection issues, and you run into other non-deterministic behavior.
Testing with async await, like using the test bed it's weird. It's weird.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of stuff, and the general pattern is use an observable. And and there's always a reason. Yeah, but I don't know how. Yeah, but I already do this on nginit. Don't use ng on it. Yeah, but it's like but then I do it. Dot subscribe. Subscribe.
There's times I almost did this in this app. I don't think I actually did. I think originally for this one, like I ended up going to the observable here, but I almost did something where I had like an async ng on init. So I could use await to get like the what came out of the selector one time. And I mean, it works. It works just fine. That works fine with change detection. But if you wanted to test it, you've got to use like the fake async and ticket, and all this other stuff. So yeah, that's a whole bag of worms.
I think the takeaway that I get from this is try to write idiomatic for the tool set or the thing you're in. So don't try to bend Angular so it feels or works like React if that's not one of the things that it does. So sure, we talk about components, but I mean, return a function in Angular that gives a component. Well, don't try to do it. And the other way around in React, probably don't want to use it the same way. I would love if there was like native RxJS support and we could just say use observable, use the observable, subscribe to the thing. But I got so used to the pattern. I built like quite a bit of like my professional stuff. It's like 50% React, mostly React Native. And then Angular, I switch back and forth. I miss stuff in Angular when I'm in React and vice versa. Like functional components, I would love these to exist inside here. But proper reactive behavior is, in my book, doesn't exist in React. And like you have use effect, but for me, that's a big hack, honestly.
Yeah.
And React people don't like that I'm saying, but it feels like a hack. It's like, dude, like we need trigger side effect, and this is what we came up with, and it works a lot of time, but it's so easy to get wrong, and it's so easy to get your app into a re-rendering state or where like race condition. And I really like the structure that Angular gives me with, like, for instance, router is key. The router is your whole, basically your spine of your app, and you can do authentication connected to the router, which is, for me, it's like super nice feeling. Like this user is not going to go to this route, and it's just handled.
Yep.
And in React, I always have to feed. And I've been working with this for like 3 years, something. I'm still fighting basic things like, make sure that this user doesn't end up in this route. Okay, no.
Yeah. Where's my route guards at?
Yeah, give me a route guard. Like maybe Brandon can build a router for React at some point.
That would be awesome. I want to play around with his some more. It seems really cool what he's been working on. But yeah, I was going to say something. Oh yes. One thing I definitely have become super fond of with NgRx, and it seems like the exact same tenet here in like the component store NgRx. I feel like RxJS gets a lot more manageable when you're in this mode where you kind of know everything's going to be a behavior subject or like be in that strategy. Because like if you're not in that, like this, whether we're using a switch map or a merge map or a concat map kind of doesn't matter when you're using a behavior subject. I guess concat map wouldn't work very well, but switch map, merge map, either one would work just as well if we're using that behavior strategy. But like you start bringing in stuff like forms into this, which aren't like form value changes are not that way. You can kind of make them that way by doing like a start with at the beginning of your pipe. But man, that stuff will get weird, and it gets weirder when you try to combine them. Then like whether you use a switch map or a merge map really starts to matter in some of those situations. And it's not exactly apparent to me, like when to use which one. Like I'm kind of getting that sense, but like without having tests in there, I want to feel confident about putting that stuff out. In my personal stuff, I always use like NgRx very extensively, partly for that reason, because now I feel confident. Like I know what this is going to look like. Yeah. When everything's going out in like a behavior strategy, you'll know you'll always get something right away. So yeah, that makes sense.
I definitely and actually I'm aware. Switch map is what I always have in mind, the autocomplete, where while you're typing, you want to cancel the stuff, and where the exhaust map, I think I'm saying it right, where the exhaust map is the one that if you hit save on 5 items at the same time, they actually all will go and save the one. And we ran into this in the workflow in the component store playground when I was on there with Chow. One of the things I built, I used like switch map as a default, like just switch map this one, and he was like, well, actually, And we built in a delay, and we made it so that we could delete like 5 at a time, and only the last one would delete, because that's what SwitchMap does. And I think a lot of it helps also with visualizing it. For a lot of people, marbles work. I kind of find it hard to read at times, but a lot of people like the marble approach.
I like the marbles. I feel like it gives me a good sense over the time aspect of things. Yeah. I think if you want to make sure everyone actually happens, that's when you want to use like a concat map. I think.
Yeah, it might be that.
Exhaust map is going to like miss some, but miss them the other way as switch map. This is what I'm talking about though. Like this stuff gets weird, and like I'd have to like throw up rxjs.dev or something like that to actually like remember, okay, which way does this work again, and like look at their diagrams and that kind of stuff. So I don't know.
No, that's definitely a common one. I just inspected. We used merge map, and this is the one we used for this particular store. Just checked it in the example. So merge map handles it correctly, and
merge map will kind of like let them all go out at by themselves individually, but you don't have like any synchronicity there. So like concat map would give you that synchronicity where you can have one be complete and then go to the other. So switch map will just like throw them off if the new one comes in before the next one comes back. So
and this is great for your autocompletes where you don't want your but last one as a result. So you really want to make sure that you only get the last one.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Like there's the tools that you get inside this tool belt. You can get really precise with these, but you have to be really precise sometimes because like it really does matter. Like you could be in a situation where you're making behavior you did not intend to at all by using a switch map versus a merge map. And a lot of the times in my mind, they're very close together in terms of like where they occupy my mental real estate, whatever you want to call it there. So,
no, I totally agree. And I think one of the main points here, because what RxJS tries to solve, at least how I explain it to people, and I know it's not a complete story, but I always tell them it solves asynchronicity, and you have a few alternatives. One is callbacks, one is promises, and the other one is observables. And sure, they also can do synchronous stuff, but let's be real, almost nobody uses it for synchronous stuff, because why? If you can just assign stuff and pass it around, if you don't need asynchronicity, you're not going to fix it. So, but then what we often see in the Discord is that people start to embrace it, start to learn about this, but they still are not used to thinking this way. So they're still going to do like, oh, you know what? Just have a subscribe block, and in the subscribe block, they would have like 15 lines of code that does a map and that does a validation. Like, oh yeah, but you know what? Up the chain, you can have a filter. So you don't even have to bother about these things. Like, oh, you know, you can just add filters to the chain and mapping stuff, wrapping around data.
Yeah.
That's all pretty much. And I think the more advanced Angular developer you be, or you become, or you work with, you'll see people not using ng on init because you don't want to have these kind of side effects. Hardly use it, maybe to push some trigger, but most likely, if you can prevent it, you will. And subscribes. Like, at some point we need to do subscribe. Like, there's hardly any way around it that you don't use a subscribe, or maybe you only use for debugging. Most of the people just async pipe all the way.
Yep.
And
if you can ever help it. There's some places I find you can't. Where you just gotta like subscribe and bite the bullet.
Yeah.
But it's weird. But yeah. I was going to say something. I completely forgot what it was. Sorry, keep going. Maybe I'll.
No. We were talking about. What I think is important here with the pattern is just try to embrace it and go all in and check out stuff. Also helps to settle at some point, and this is why I think I end up with maybe 10 operators at max. But if I can prevent adding another one, I might do it.
Yeah, it's all true shakeable, so all your bundle size, right? I remembered what I was going to say though was so me and Alex were together. He was introducing Component Store for this meetup, but we were doing Seattle JS together, and Yeah, my talk there was about observables, and it was about just doing declarative code that way.
Right.
I think that's one thing observables can really help you with. Like, yeah, can you show my screen again just real quick?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Like just this piece I have highlighted here, this Aeon observable, right?
Yeah.
This is the fact that it's observable kind of signals to you, hey, this might change over time, which it could. Like if this activated route, the params on the activated route change, I could potentially like get a different ID here, and that could create a different Aeon being emitted from this observable.
If you have a list of Aeons on the sidebar and you connect that to the route and you see the detail, then that's what happens each time you click one. You don't get a new component, but rather it will just receive a new property, and this will get triggered. So
yeah, but so a lot of the times what I see from people, I think this is a mistake. You could do something like this, where instead of this Aeon observable, if you just say Aeon is an Aeon, right? And then I'm going to take this and copy it. I'm going to throw this, actually, I'll just throw it in the constructor. And you'd do something here where you'd like subscribe.
This is how I started too, and it was way easier to reason about because this was what I'm familiar with. Think callback. This is like a callback but with extra steps, or think .then, and this is what you're ending up with. And then yeah, right. So this is and I think you kind of nicely show we're solving the same issue here.
Yeah.
Different tool for the same issue.
This is effectively the same thing. The difference, like the only difference I'm doing here, if I look at the update component at the top here, I'm like, this is my subscribe right here, right? This is pipe async. You might as well read that as like .subscribe. But there's one thing, there's one reason I would definitely not do this, and that's because like for this is fine. If this is all we're doing, perfect. You know, I'm good with this. But when someone says, like say this is some enterprise project and this is some file like 2,000 lines long, because this happens. I've seen it. I've seen it in my contracting work. You have this place where you say, okay, let me just like find all references of this. Right now, we only see it being set here. But I've seen places where this bar is full. There's like 50 different things here. And you're just like, okay, how could this change again? And you're like trying, like just mapping this out in your head to where you're trying to connect all the different methods, all the different ways something could change. It gets unmanageable really quick. Whereas if I just had this right here, let me just hit undo a couple more times, right? Like going back to this right here. This could be maybe a complicated observable, but anywhere that this Aeon property changes is defined in this block in one place. That's the advantage of doing things this way, I think. I don't know. What do you
totally
think?
agree. Totally agree. And this is 2020 B-Man talking.
Yeah.
Let's say 2018 B-Man was .subscribe, do the things, make sure you have a clean way to do your undestroys, because I got called out, hey, you don't clean up. So you need to clean up. But
people talk about these subscribe leaks like they're a problem, man. What really? You're running Angular inside of Chrome. Who really cares if these subscriptions are leaking out? Unless it's like having some bad side effects. I'm almost like, I still do it. I'm the same as you. Like, just if nothing else, for fear of the shame of someone saying you need to stop subscribing. Sorry, go ahead.
No. But that's the thing. So now this is me. But there's other things that people don't know how to solve that I until recently didn't really know how to solve. For instance, in this case, in no place in your function, let's say in your submit method, you want to get a hold of this actual selected Aeon. There is no asynchronous way to do this. And this actually, I already say what the answer is. You have to go into the asynchronous way. So actually what you need to do, if you want to have the submit handler and get a hold of this, you have to say, oh, you know what? No, I wouldn't do it this way. I don't use async. No. Just subscribe to this thing. This.eon, the $, pipe it, etc. Just go your way around it this way, and now you have a hold of this Aeon. Now you can say, oh, you know what? I actually want to go to the service and whatever, calculate Aeon strength or whatever. I wouldn't even take one. You might, but I don't promise. Don't promise. Dude.
Yeah, look at this. Look at this. This is so nice. I love this. So you say, boom.
Oh my God, I hate it. Thanks, I hate it. you know that 2promise is gonna go, right?
What's that?
2promise is gonna go.
I know. I think so. I think the way, I don't know. I feel like there's, I think I read this somewhere that you could still like put this into a promise, right?
Yeah, I mean you could, but like for personally, it's a step back, and it's also a step back in the sense like you have to write idiomatic code. So what I was doing in this situation, so I wanted to have a reference, and I didn't realize, oh, you know what? Because the thing I'm calling into in the service already going to be an observable, so I might as well just start with another observable, take the property, and do a switch map or do a merge map, whatever I need. But how I used to do this on line 17, up there, after where you got it, I would add another tab, and I would set a local property setting Aeon is this.eon. So I could have the benefit of having this local property. Setting it wouldn't affect anything because that doesn't work. Nothing reads it. But at least this pattern kind of works. So I think it's also having a lot of, probably a lot of coding hours with this pattern to understand like, you know what? It's actually, once it's an observable stream, it doesn't really matter where it is or what you want to do with it, because you can treat it as such. Yeah.
I don't know, man. I like this async await stuff. I think there's something there. Let me see if I can pull up a tweet real quick. Something I wrote with.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love async await. I use it always in my backend code. In my Nest APIs, you won't find a lot of. I have a few RxJS stuffs there, but. And talking about NX, in NX 11, I just took a look today at the new generator syntax. I think the cleanup is amazing. I'm not sure if you have worked with NX 11 schematics implementation, if to put it that way.
Yeah, the generators now.
The generators, exactly. They got a huge cleanup by not being a chain of events that you have to like orchestrate, but just async await everything.
Yep. Just a promise. So yeah, this was the tweet I'm talking about. Can you all see this?
Yeah. If you can bump it up a little bit, then that would be.
Yeah, let's bump this up. Right. Okay. So this is like, I guess this is maybe not exactly the same, but this was like a can deactivate guard I was writing, right? So this is the observable implementation. If I say it needs to return an observable of a Boolean, and we're doing some stuff where like,
if you have changes.
Yeah, we got form has changes. We're switch mapping that of true, and then with the switch map is really there so we can like open this dialog and then return the dialog refs after closed and pipe that over, right? So this is returning an observable. Versus this is returning a promise with an async can deactivate, and this just seems so much cleaner than me to me. It's like essentially the same thing. It's doing the same thing right here, that await with the 2promise. And I don't know, man. For a lot of things, I like async await better for just like one or two things. I think it's a similar thing to the thing we were just looking at there, where sometimes async await just like it's you're gonna have to do some stuff with the test bed if you want to test it. But let's be honest, B-man, are we really testing this anyways? You know what I'm saying?
You're talking to the right guy, man. I'm all down with missing some testability. No, I definitely hear that. And when I see this, I could definitely get used to it. I can imagine. It's for sure it's less lines of code.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if this works.
I think more than less lines of code. Sometimes the just the flow of it reads a little better. Like I think about this is the way I think about it anyways. And when I'm writing this, I'm really just transposing this anyways into ArcGIS.
But let's move back to this one, because
to this one, the
observable one, because I just want to quickly wrap my head around what makes it this different. So can we check in the other one how we do the forms has changes check?
Yeah.
So this is just, okay, and you take one and you do the promise, and this is just gets you the Boolean.
Yep.
So because all you're interested in, if you cancel click and submit click, return true.
Yep, and that's happening over here as well.
Yeah, so that's basically
this
the same.
We're doing of true. Really, this could have been a Boolean or an observable of Boolean, right? Because that's what the can deactivate will take. So like this of, wrapping in that of is just like to keep it consistently and observable.
Yeah, and you do a switch map because that's the same, but you because the dialogue is obviously async. Yeah, okay, I get that.
Yeah, we gotta wait. We gotta wait for, well, first we gotta open it and get the reference to it, and then after we have the reference, then we have to listen to after closed. And with like, so the idea is form has changes as implemented elsewhere, but it's pretty much. I think this one in particular was checking. We had this form and we had our NgRx state, and we're like comparing those two to see did they actually change, yes or no.
Right.
By saying, well, is there deep equality here? And so we start with that. If there's no changes, of course, we just say go ahead, you can leave. But if there's not, we want to open this dialog ref to say, are you sure you want to leave, essentially, right? And then depending on how the user responds to that, we're either going to, if they say go ahead and leave the page, then we let them through. Otherwise, we keep them there. In this can deactivate guard, so they don't leave the component. So
one of the things, but that's kind of besides the point of using async await or not. One of the things that I would definitely do, and this is again cutting the meat and wrapping around, I have a dialog service that's just dialog service confirm, takes the title or takes a component and returns an observable of a Boolean, yes or no. And that, because a dialog ref, I totally understand why we need it and why we have it. I don't think it should be in a guard, because that's like something UI related. That's, you're gonna have a confirm dialog probably at 5 other places in your app anyway. So I think in this case, but it's totally besides the point of the cleaner syntax. And I do agree that async await syntax is cleaner, easier to reason about, and probably like 80% more developers that understand that one versus this one. So this, there's definitely a lot to say for that solution. I definitely should consider it at some point.
Well, I don't know if I've been kind of, I don't get on Fights Twitter that much in general, just because I'm not very confrontational, I guess you can say.
Right.
I like joking with friends, but with strangers, I'm just like, let's all be happy and friendly. So I don't know, but yeah, I really think promises have their place in Angular too. And we talked about this on my show too. I've said that like 10 times now, I feel like, but like, I feel like observables are like, you're talking about asynchronicity, right? That's why you use observables. I feel like observables are like the polygon of this,
right.
Whereas promise is a square.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, if you have polygon, you don't need square because you can describe a square with your polygon API. But sometimes it's nice to have that square because there's so many things that polygon could be. And and when you have a square, people know squares, man. Like you get squares. But you say polygon to someone on the street, they go like, what's that again? Is that some new polygon.io site?
These millennials. No, I totally, and I really like the comparison. I'm probably going to steal it, but I'm kind of
you're
stealing
good
kind
at
of person.
My stuff, man, and I love it.
And now I totally hear that, and and why make it more difficult if it can be easier?
Yeah,
it's I would definitely be amazed if I would see line 27. Well, it would be amazed because they're squiggly lines. But if you would do the implementation here with the
well, so in this one, let's actually look at this real quick, because this is I'm actually doing like, I don't want to say this is hacky. It's just kind of like unfortunate. Like the submit right now, if we look at submit, where's that coming from? I guess that's here on the ng submit.
ng submit gets triggered.
Yeah. So I'm passing through the Aeon. It's kind of weird. It's like, here's the Aeon I'm defining. We're subscribing.
This is exactly the reason I brought up this use case.
Yeah.
So you're either gonna be passing it along in methods, but that doesn't scale, and then you do prop drilling on a high level, where you already have.
That's essentially what it is. It's like it's here in our TypeScript. We're sending it to the template, and then we're sending it back. Which I don't know. So we could. Like, you could legitimately do this, right? Like that works. The only reason that squiggly was there is because there's another
sure, yeah.
So
sure.
I don't know why the squiggly is here.
That's because you don't. That shouldn't be there. Restart TypeScript service. That's TypeScript being.
Well, this is the TypeScript service. This is like the Angular language service. Is there a way to restart that? I don't know.
I think it restarts with. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Yeah, I learned something new today. But
awesome.
Yeah, the tools are great.
Awesome. And I think in any case, I would love to have you on another time to talk about Formally, because I think you're gonna be liking that as well. And
dude, I was thinking that I've got this form component. I was like, oh, he's gonna get
this is one of the cleaner forms I ever seen, because it's like hardly any form real estate here. But no, and
originally I was like doing them all out, and I was like, wait, this is just, I was literally just copying and pasting this block. I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So,
yeah. So if you talk about, so I like to describe my tools or think about tools. What problem do they solve? Because that's often a good way to explain it. And this is like with RxJS, this is what I compare it with. People have like a mental map. With forms, my biggest issue with, I love reactive forms, and people hear me talking about Formally, and they're like, but I like reactive forms. Yeah, me too. I love them. I love them, love them. And I love to have an abstraction on top of it, which is Formally. So Formally is not kicking out reactive forms. It's embracing it. It's providing some guidance on doing probably the right thing. For most of the apps, most of the questions we have in the Discord is around forms. People like, oh yeah, trying to do this.
It's rough. It's a rough topic. Like this is like state is a black hole. Forms are just like, hey, dude, take that black hole and you gotta like backflip over it now.
Well, and the most important part, I think, it's one of the most intimate parts of your apps, where the user actually goes in and interact with your app rather than just navigating and reading. Well, reading is kind of passive, but forms need to feel right. But the main issue with reactive forms in Angular, and let's not even bother with template-based forms. Let's leave that into AngularJS. So
we don't even talk about template-based forms, right?
Right. But reactive forms, the main issue I have, there's so much repetition in your templates, which doesn't serve purpose. Like there's your inputs doesn't get better. Like if you look at line 6 to 9 to line 11 to 14, the reason this is there in this way is only because Angular didn't provide an abstraction to render out components with your form control. So if you could say at some point, hey, this form control, actually, each time you render this form control, render me out this component, to render it out, you would probably use it. And the reason I try to plug Formally, and I'm not even ashamed about it, and I'm trying to do more content and invite people to use it, is because I hope that brilliant minds in the Angular community look into it, will promote it, because it's a better pattern, and actually make it even better, because there's obviously going to be things in there that don't that are not right or not optimal.
There was so like just going with like this right here, like this is how you get like proper accessibility on the web for this kind of stuff. Like there's normally I don't see people using the labels. Yeah. Don't see people using the for or the IDs all that much, and it's just it's hard to do this. It's like extra. I feel like I'm wasting wasted like disk space in my brain.
Yeah,
you're like remember and how the accessibility is supposed to work there. So any tool that can like get that out of my head and into just some actual code, that sounds like what Formly is, right?
It is, and it comes with super sane defaults, so your components will be accessible by default. I actually had an accessibility expert, or at least in my book, she was an expert, look at my Formly forms, and she said, this is doing a lot of things right, because we had it was an NG Columbia here in 2018.
Yeah,
we had Sani Jusuf doing a talk about forms and how to interact and how to do proper feedback in forms and accessibility. And I came with Formly, like how to get your forms out of your templates, because that was title of Stormers. Get your reactive forms out of your templates.
Yeah,
and
it needs to be get accessibility out of your head and into code where someone smarter than you has written it.
But the thing is, the beauty is you don't have to worry about it, because it does it. And then if you need an edge case, extending it it's a bit more work than creating a regular component, because you have to do some you have to basically formlify it, if you will, and register it with Formly. But after that, it's the same gist. And I'm actually challenging people, and so you're the one being challenged right now. If you have a use case, you think, okay, this is super hard with Formly, or I'd like to see how this works, shoot me in a repo, and I'm going to do it on stream. Or even better, if you have a production app that I can show on screen or parts of. Even better if it's production stuff, and we're like, okay, I'm just going to install Formly, going to tackle 1 or 2 forms. Let's start with like Auth, something simple, and let's take a more complicated thing. For instance, I'm pretty sure if you see how you subscribe to Selectbox, you have Selectbox and you have dropdowns and these options to come from an API without doing any state management, without using a library. Just pass in, say, okay, these are my observables, and do the rest magically. And it's these kind of things. It's a huge time saver in the long run. And thinking about copy and pasteability of your forms, my forms are a JSON object, so it's an array of objects. So if I get into another project, I copy the form definition, paste them in one, and my form renders. I don't need to do anything else. And
that's awesome. Yeah, no, having that kind of data, like that feels like how you should be doing forms, is like having some sort of data structure, like the JSON you're mentioning, and saying, okay, this is the description of that form. Let's have some library like generate my template for me. That seems like the proper way around that. There was talk about an NgRx form package that I was talking about with Brandon, some of the folks there at doing NgRx stuff. We had been working on a paper, and this was a while back ago, and nothing's really come of it since. But like one of the biggest things was looking for something like this, right? Like saying, let's define this with data. And for me, that's fine. Like I think that's a good approach, but like Formly exists. Like that's already a thing. The thing that gets me is like you have so the API for interacting with forms is unfortunate in that like all you have to say, let's make this form actually reactive, like hence the name reactive forms, is calling set value, or the user like actually modifying it via the DOM, right, via their browser. Which the reason that's unfortunate is because now you have to kind of like imperatively manage the state of your form. Like there's no other option, right? There's nothing in the API that says, here, take this observable, and whenever this observable, like create effect, or like the effects in the
component store.
Just take this observable, and whenever you see this observable emit, change in this way. That doesn't exist. Like you can kind of do that, but you still at some point you have to subscribe and imperatively like call set value again, which just that's my biggest thing. That's the big thing I'd like to tackle. I'm not really quite sure how to handle that. I have the idea of it. Like it's pretty much what I described. You have something where you say, here's the way to define how this should be reactive. Here's one single observable that describes whenever this emits, change in this way.
But then you're talking about, like, for instance, hiding or showing fields.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but I think and this is the thing. You mentioned Formally is there, but I know you also don't use it. This is not to judge you by all means. I know how this works. You see something nice, you put it on the list, and the list keeps growing, and we have a list. Like, it's Jay high. I totally hear that. I have a ton of stuff I still need to check out. But the point is, most people that I know of that are like out there in the Angular community, sharing their stuff and showing their node, there's a very few that know about Formally. Whereas if you show them, there's like, oh, this is exactly what I need. And what I try to do is show people how easy it is to start and actually start using it. Because there's one thing saying like, okay, it's super easy to use. There's not a learning curve like with NgRx Global Store, but which has some learning curve. You need to stop doing stuff.
You still need to learn about JSONs. Right.
Yeah. Well, you need to learn syntax. That's definitely true. And if you're going to start from scratch and you're not going to check out how other people use it, like with NgRx, you want to learn some best practices. So if you're starting out with plain Formally, there's definitely stuff to learn. But if Yuri's course on Egghead is amazing. Yeah. If you check that course, it's like half an hour, I think. You get like how to use this stuff and why it's awesome and what issues you fix. You're fixing your effing templates and for me that's used. What I really liked about your update component, by the way, is that you already if you can switch to your update component template for a second. Yeah. This is where you actually called the Aeon form. Now, what I do, as I said, I wrap around third-party libraries. Formally is not an exception. So I end up with, I often call it like UI form. But you can call it like whatever app form or Aeon form if you want. Yeah. And this is it. You have the form in there as well, so you don't need to write a form. You can do a button in there as well. I generally have a configurable button. So I have my submit by default. I don't have a button by default. I can just pass in like a label, which makes it submit. And then from here on, you expose your reactive form. So if you want to do like subscribing to value changes or whatever, that's totally fine. And you pass in fields, and you're golden. And I'm pretty sure you'll like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I will too. Like you got it, you pegged it perfectly. It's one of those cool things that went on the list and like it's behind and like these other things. But it's probably one I need to invest some time in soon. But this hashtag Aeon form is super helpful for that.
And I have one alternative on how to use forms. So maybe two. Declarative forms, when I have to explain to somebody how it works. Sure, I'm not gonna start out with Formally. I am gonna say you don't have to remember this because I have a solution for you that fixes it. And I had a discussion on Twitter. People were like, yeah, but it's a learning curve. I had juniors start with Formally. If you know how to copy paste stuff, you can use Formally. So that's not a real issue. But there's one other use case where I like it like quick and dirty. If I have like a search input, and only thing I have is a search input, I do a hashtag on the input, and in the method or where the key up.enter or whatever I use to trigger my search, I pass in this raw input reference to the input, to the HTML input, and I use that. So if it's a one field form, search input, or I think maybe a checkbox at some spot, that might be another one. But other than that, it's I never use it.
Yeah,
I can't.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
Fair enough.
No. We all have these lists, and I aim to check out Vue with TypeScript a few months ago. I started it up. It was really nice to work with, and then I saw it yesterday. This is why it popped into my mind. It's like, this was like, was it September already that I started this project? Good intentions. Start to get a hold of Vue. No. Yeah. Not yet.
Well, in general, man, like for 2021, one of my big things is like trying to figure out some better focus for myself. Like that list for me is a million items long. Yeah. And I feel like I'll like take a few things towards the top of the stack and like have to get into them. And I'd like to change things up for 2021 where I am being more disciplined with that and saying, here's my stack. Yes, it's inconceivably long, but this is what's at the top. I'm going to pop it off the stack. I'm going to like do it intensely for a month. Then I'm going to shelf it and say, I understand this enough. Like maybe do some articles about that. I wanted to do more content. Yeah, just go from there. Maybe sometimes maybe that will be a topic. Sometimes maybe that'll be a project. I'd love to get to like having some more things inside of a portfolio. Like I guess now I've got all these articles out and a bunch of stack blitzes kind of floating around, but I'd love to get something out in the world that real people actually work with and just try to tap into that some more too. So
that's cool, man. That's some good resolutions.
Yeah.
I talked to Chow today and I pronounced, and I already had it in my mouth, but I said it out loud, at least chatted it out loud to him. 2020 for me is going to be the year of proper testing, period. And I've worked in a startup before. Well, the story has been told. At the startup where I worked, we had to do proper testing, and it was super nice because before I never worked in a team. I always was a solo developer for my whole life. Only like met the casual person on the internet that you chat with, but never had a team. We had a team of developers, but it was like 3 isolated developers doing all their own stuff. So no code reviews, no demands like you have to test. And then I got to this startup, and they were just like, here we just do test-driven development, more or less. So you can fiddle around a bit, but then after you commit, you're gonna have to provide the test, and it needs to work. And it got me in the habit. And I sadly lost it because a lot of my clients, they ask like, please don't spend any time doing that stuff. I build a lot of prototypes. So a lot of people just want to have like, I want this data model to work, and I want to have an app that does just this and forget about the rest. I charge them by the hour, and it's kind of hard to insist on tests. And
well, you put in tests there, you're probably doubling your development time. So, and you can probably cover some things in doing that. Like it's not time wasted, but it's like if you're trying to optimize that time, and especially for I think startups, the impetus is on getting stuff out fast. It's something you want to think about, because it's and this is something I've talked about on Twitter too. I think when you start introducing testing, it's not just that you're paying that double cost up front. It's also every time there's a change now, a change that's going to affect your test. You just increased the impact of that test. And of course, when you made that change, you kind of want that thing to fail, right? But it's like now not only do you have to write double for that one feature, that new capability you added, you also have to add a little bit more than double because you also have to fix tests from the other stuff. So I don't know. It is what it is.
Right. Yeah. But for my personal projects, which I also tend to have quite a bit, and there's no excuse not to just get into the habit of it. And I added in my NXPM stack, where I scaffold full stack NX workspaces with Angular and Nest and Prisma, and it's all ready to go. It has authentication on board. There I actually provide an API end-to-end test, which for APIs, I really like having an end-to-end test for my GraphQL endpoints. And I can use the same queries. So I basically generate a whole bunch of my API interactions. So in my tests, I have to just say, I know what, execute this query with this parameters. And
what are you doing for end-to-end tests? Are you like actually standing up the API and then actually doing HTTP requests against it? Nice.
Yeah, which is GraphQL. So it's just an HTTP request, use a super test, and it just fires off. GraphQL generally works with posts, so it just post requests. And have some nice helper methods around. So my tests by itself don't
they're like post requests, and the query is actually like a string inside the body.
JSON.
Right?
It's JSON object. You have you have a query object, which is a string, and then you have a variables object, which is how to make the query variable. Let's say passing the user ID or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And, that stuff seems super helpful, especially on the API side, right? Yeah. Like, I always thought that for myself, like if I want to do proper end-to-end tests where I actually feel like I'm getting value out of it, I go for Cypress. Like something like this would be awesome. I'm really loving the Firebase emulators. Would love to. I haven't messed around with this yet, but this might be a good, test case for it. Is figure out a way to get Cypress to run on some script where I just like run those 2 commands I showed, and then just let Cypress go out and test the whole thing.
Yeah,
I just feel like that's testing things in a way that feels like I won't have to change it later. Like the implementation may change later, my tests won't.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a very fair point. And I actually saw one of the projects I did last October or something. I had this NXPM stack and I had this E2IT test, and I started test-driven, built the API. I think the first 2 or 3 weeks I went all in. It was super nice, and even refactoring stuff was even better because at some moment the client wanted to go from 1 email address per user, so just an email field. They wanted to have the user multiple email addresses, so I had to add a new collection for our new table for the emails, add a relationship, and make sure that the rest works. And the fact that I had tests makes it super straightforward because I basically went off of the test. Where does this fail? Okay, these are the touching points I have with my emails. Well, and TypeScript is the other half probably because my database layer generates TypeScript. So if I get rid of something and I cannot longer use it, it will not build. So with these 2 together, it was super nice. And I spun up a huge part of the API without even having the front end wired up or starting. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, getting to that point where you're actually writing the tests first and then just making it go green. There's something really nice about that feeling. I don't, but yeah. And actually the client, which is one of my main clients, I do like half my work with them. He's the one, he never did testing. He's no time, no money, etc. And I just started it and I showed him and he was like super impressed. Like, oh, we're getting decent at what we're doing here. Like to share up your professional game. Yeah. No, that's cool. Just getting to the point where you feel like, yes, these pieces are all coming full circle, and that's that's in itself a cool feeling. I think NX, I'm pitching my own stuff, but NX is great for that. Just getting all that stuff nice and easily to a place where you can do that without much configuration. So
no, in any case, the last thing of my concerns with regard to testing is the tool chain, and NX does indeed a great job. So these props to the amazing folks at Narwhals, which you are one of. So
it's great being part of Narwhal because I'm just like, there's all these smart people there, and I get credit by association. So
you're one of them, man. You're one of them.
Yeah.
If you weren't smart, I'm sure you wouldn't get hired.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying I'm not smart, just not as smart as some of them. Let's just put it that way. I'm trying to get there though. That's the whole goal with the mastery and that stuff. So very very, very cool to be on your show, sir. And it's a great way to finish 2020. I think it's been a good year for me, all things considered. And thanks for bringing me on.
It was awesome to have you. You were on the list already, and I really like how organic it went. So we went talking about this, and then like, let's come on. Does Wednesday work? Yes, works. And this is how great things happen.
Yeah.
And no, thanks a lot for being here. I wish you all the best for the celebrations tomorrow. You're going to celebrate it?
Maybe. Like, so we're moving into a house right now. We're doing like we just bought it last week, and
okay, congrats.
We're just, me and my wife. She's been doing like all the renovations on everything there, and I'm just kind of staying home with the kids. And she's doing an amazing job on everything.
Very cool.
I imagine our celebration will be something like going to bed and watching X-Files together. And then, maybe we'll stay up till midnight, maybe not.
Nice.
So this is my life though, dude.
Yeah, no, totally hear that. I'm also going to be on the balcony with the missus.
Nice.
I've always, like, since I think 2010, I try to be in a different country to celebrate it, because like in Europe, it's super easy to travel, and I was always moving. And So I haven't celebrated in the same place since 2010 in the same country.
You are so much more adventurous than I am, dude.
But I'm actually super happy this year that I'm on a couch with my wife, and it's just like, oh, it's
Hey, sometimes it's not where you're at; it's who you're with, right?
Totally agree. Yeah, totally agree. And so this is a great, boring, very adult thing to look forward to. I might have like a beer or 2, 3, and then just go to bed at like 1:30 or something. Just like very, very regular. Love it. So
awesome.
Cool, man. Thanks a lot for being here. That's going to be a wrap for today. We almost made it like 2.5 hours, almost into 3. So that's one of the bigger ones. And great to have you. Super interesting stuff again. Thanks a lot, everybody. Thanks for watching. And I hope to see you in the new year. Bye-bye, everybody.
See y'all.